Hello, Topical, and welcome back to your favorite NBA coverage from your favorite podcast. And today's going to be a really fun episode. I've got my loyal NBA correspondent, Aradh Faruqi, on, and we're going to talk about all the playoff matchups coming up tomorrow. Yeah, we recorded this right at the last minute. And yeah, we're super excited for the playoffs. We hope you all are, if you're as excited as I am, frankly. I really enjoyed watching the last game that I watched. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Go check out our YouTube page, Topical Rationalizing the Monkey Brain. You can find all the unedited recordings that I've done. And hey, in the next couple weeks, recordings are really going to heat up, so you're going to want to make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of them. And yeah, we're going to get right into things. So, Aradh, I know the only game that you and I have watched since we last recorded, which was 3 days ago, was the Timberwolves Jazz, not Timberwolves Jazz. That kept confusing me during the game because the Nuggets jerseys looked exactly like the Jazz, but the Nuggets Timberwolves game, and really what I couldn't be happier with, just a play-in game for the playoffs. And I'll use it as my excuse to say that the playoffs this year, every team that had a winning record got into the playoffs.
Yep, that is that was something that I appreciated about this year's playoffs as well. Um, I do feel for Denver Nuggets fans, even though I myself am a Timberwolves fan. They had a good season, and I feel like if Paul Millsap had been healthy all year, they probably would have been more of like a solid 5 or 6 seed, given the craziness in the West, rather than barely losing out. So that was unfortunate for them, but they probably are. They're probably just maybe 1 addition, 2 additions away from finally breaking into the playoffs, because I know they've been so close in the past couple of years.
Oh yeah, and really, it almost seems like the injuries would have balanced out completely in the playoffs. Just there was no team left untouched by injuries at this point.
Exactly. I think everybody missed time. I think from top to bottom, I know James Harden, Chris Paul missed time, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant missed time. The Spurs obviously had Kawhi gone all year. Russell Westbrook, their team lost Andre Robertson, and then the Jazz missed Gobert. The Timberwolves missed Jimmy Butler. The Nuggets missed Millsap. The Blazers, I'm not really sure off the top of my head. I'm sure someone did. The Pelicans obviously missing DeMarcus Cousins this year, and that's just in the Western Conference. I'm sure the Eastern Conference has been ravaged a little bit as well.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, sorry. And what did you think of the game itself? I thought it was one of the most exciting games I've seen in the past year. So it beat out the other 4 I've seen.
To me, it was a fantastic game. I remember I watched it beginning to end actually, and I was, as soon as I thought to myself, like, aside from a little personal bias, I knew after the first basket that I thought the Timberwolves were going to win, because the Timberwolves had the ball. They scored first, so it was 2-0. And then on the Nuggets' first possession, the Timberwolves as a team, they played fantastic defense. They switched everything. They played up on all shooters, but gave enough space to defend them if they chose to drive. The first defensive possession of that game for them was I thought fantastic. So I just knew that if they could keep up that sort of intensity throughout the entire game, that they would have probably a better chance of winning the game, because I think once you mix in great play with better players, which I do believe the Timberwolves had in that particular game, because the Nuggets, while Nikola Jokic and Karl Anthony Towns are both excellent, I don't think that Denver has anyone that can really combat the two-way ability of Jimmy Butler. So I pinpointed that as probably just the defense being the reason that I thought the Timberwolves would win, which towards the end of the game, if anybody was watching, turned out to be the case, as the unsung hero of the Timberwolves, somewhat pretty bad defense this year has been Taj Gibson. He's the one that can really step it up, and he's an extremely versatile power forward. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the league, because he's not really an offensive player. He's more of a scrappy defensive player who's focuses on getting offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds, and just making life hell for any other player who's like 6'8" or taller. So the game was the game itself was fantastic. I don't think that there was a lead bigger than I think maybe 8 or 9 throughout the game. It obviously went to overtime. It was tied at 101 to 101 for a good amount of time. And it was fun to watch as well because during the second quarter, the third quarter, it was the Nuggets were kind of increasing the pace. They were playing how they like to play, and because they love to run, obviously, because it's easy for them to run
Yeah.
since they play in Denver so frequently, where the altitude is all different and all that. So they're a pretty good team in transition and all that. So they were getting out to run, and then the Timberwolves were able to slow it down when the game was coming closer to the end, and then and I think the play of the game, which I'm sure you would agree with, was Nikola Jokic was isolated on, or Taj Gibson was isolated on Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic was looking to make a play, and Taj Gibson stripped him clean of the basketball with about 3 seconds left. And then, the Timberwolves got and that kept the game tied to send it to overtime. And then, Jamal Crawford tried to heave from half court to try and win the game, but obviously it didn't go in. And then it went to overtime, and then overtime was a beautiful thing to me because I noticed a few things that I wasn't sure that I would see as a Timberwolves fan. Jimmy Butler, while obviously I have a lot of faith in him. Like I've been a fan of him even before he was on the Timberwolves. I liked him when he was on the Bulls because I always recognized that he played both ends of the floor and that he was a pretty clutch player. He wasn't really afraid of shooting the ball in big moments or having the ball in his hands or anything like that. Him making consecutive big plays on both ends was something that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, it was a great series.
Yeah, Andrew Wiggins hitting 2 clutch free throws, even though he's a 64% free throw shooter this year, and had I think he missed 2 that night, but he went to the line and he calmly knocked down both of his free throws. And then Karl Anthony Towns, even though he's billed at 6'11", but I think looking at him, he's really not 6'11". He's probably more like 6'9".
Oh, really?
Huh. Yeah, that's a common thing actually. Like NBA players are typically either taller or not as tall as they're listed at.
Yeah,
it's a strange thing, but because Kevin Durant's definitely not 6'9". He's closer to 6'11", 7 feet.
Yeah,
that sort of thing. So Karl Anthony Towns is probably more 6'9", 6'10" than he is 6'11", 7 feet. So he came up huge for a huge rebound over the entire Denver Nuggets team, which essentially clinched the game because then Denver obviously had to start fouling and all that. So big plays from all 3 of the team's best players, I guess, or if you want to call Andrew Wiggins the third best player, obviously sometimes it's Jeff Teague, sometimes it's Taj Gibson, but overall I was really impressed. There definitely, as a Timberwolves fan, there was definitely some nail-biting moments when I thought Denver might close it out, especially up until Taj Gibson made that play. I was really worried, but after he made that, I kind of had faith because they had all the momentum going into overtime, and it did not disappoint. I thought it was an excellent game.
Yeah, for me, you obviously thought that their defense convinced you that they were going to win. For me, what really convinced me that the Timberwolves were going to win, I would love to see a stat on this, but the Timberwolves were leading for something like 40 minutes out of the 48-minute regular time. And it just seems like that happens so often that the team who was leading for the longest wins, and especially when you dominate it like that, and where the commentators kept mentioning the Nuggets not having a lead until the overtime when they obviously went up by 1 point with a couple minutes left, until it was 19-18 in the first quarter. So for just 3 quarters, the Timberwolves not dominated, but they held the lead. They played solid defense. They got amazing contributions out of Taj Gibson. We were talking about this the next day, that Taj Gibson had the game of his life. He was making all the defensive plays. He made a couple great steals. Him and Jimmy Butler had fantastic games. Karl Anthony Towns was great on the boards. He was getting tons of rebounds. And the commentators kept mentioning that it was going to be a concern about how he was getting so many fouls. But luckily it never came to a head. And he was able to stay in the game the entire way. It was fascinating watching him battle with Jokic because you could really see that Jokic was trying to tease him, and not tease him, but taunt him into giving up a foul, and just some of those exchanges where Karl Anthony Towns kept getting stuck on Jokic were bizarre.
Yeah, the referees definitely. I feel like it's an interesting thing in the league because we've been covering refs a lot, but I think it's when you have more finesse style players, kind of because among big men in the league now, Jokic is he's definitely one of the more finesse big men. He's more about passing the ball and doing, he kind of plays more like a guard than he does like a big. So I think it's easier for him to get some calls because of the way he plays, similarly to how more finesse players James Harden, for example, gets a lot of calls because he doesn't really play physically, and Jokic doesn't do that much either. So, and I think I in a weird way, I really liked to see that Karl Anthony Towns was not like, he wasn't fouling, and like that it didn't come to a head because even though I'm sure he accumulated some fouls. I'm not sure how many, but the fact that he wasn't shying away from playing defense was that was important to me because it kind of shows me that that's kind of the next thing that he really needs to commit to, I guess, next season before he becomes like, obviously he's already a star, but to really become like maybe like a top 10 player in the league or something like that, he really needs to just, I guess, make more of a commitment on defense because while he's been a good defensive player this season, better than he has in the previous 2 years, I feel like there's not much more that he needs to improve about his offensive game because even though he's a center, he shoots 43% from the three-point line, which is outstanding, and he shoots like 87 or 88% from the free throw line, and he shoots like 54 to 55% from the field. So, I mean, there are points of the season where people thought that he might end up averaging a 50, 40, 90 if he could just
which would have been unbelievable.
Yeah, he could. People were just thinking that all he really needed to do was go on a hot streak of free throws. So, and obviously he plays very well in the post. So I don't really think that there's that much more that he needs to shore up about his offensive game. So I would love to see for him to go into this offseason and just commit more to defense because he could come back next year being an extremely phenomenal two-way force, which with another year of the team being together could probably lift them to maybe being a higher seed in the West next year.
Yeah, definitely, and it's the same thing for the opposing center in the game, Nikola Jokic. And I almost feel like Nikola Jokic needs better defense even more than Karl Anthony Towns. I was reading an article on 538 about Jokic and going based on Basketball References Play Index tool, which is a tool that they used, but it's a tool that I like to use also, mainly for NBA 2K. But in this case, it's fascinating where you can just set a bunch of parameters where you can say, okay, look through every player's season in the past, history of the NBA, and you can just say look for players with a rebounding percentage of greater than 15%, like an assist percentage greater than 20, a true shooting percentage greater than 65, as many different stats as you want, and like as many different comparisons as you want, and just find every player that is like that in NBA history, and that was really cool for me in NBA 2K. I got to find what my career player was like, but when you run that with Nikola Jokic and you use the factors, let me look exactly, based on his total rebound percentage, assist percentage, free point attempt rate, and true shooting percentage, there's literally no player in NBA history that has numbers even within 5% of Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, he's an extremely, he's such a gifted offensive player. He averaged 6 assists and he's a center, which is absurd. I can't. The last big man I think that averaged 6 assists was Kevin Garnett. I think in 2005 or 2003. So one of those years. One of the years, 2003, 4, or 5. I think it was the year after his MVP season, which would make it 2005. And then obviously the last really gifted passing center that we saw was Joakim Noah when he was on the Bulls. He averaged close to 6 assists, but he was still closer to 5.
Yes.
So he did a good, but in terms of currently, I don't think that there's a comparison that he's the best passing big, and it's not even in terms of the fact that he gets so many assists. It's just the sorts of passes that he's able to make. He throws passes behind his head, over the back. He doesn't look he really has he has amazing court awareness of where his teammates are, which to me kind of tells me that he knows all of his schemes and where everyone is on the court at all times, which, not very many players can do. I think if I were to just list off the top of my head players that really know that, it'd be all the high IQ players. It would be LeBron, Chris Paul. I don't even think there's superstars in the league I don't think have that ability. I don't think, even though Russell Westbrook gets a lot of assists, I think all of that is more he drives to the rim and then he dumps it off to Steven Adams or he kicks it out. It's not really, making creative or
I agree.
Nifty passes out of necessity. It's just kind of he goes to the rim with the intention of creating for someone else. And I don't think Durant has that ability. I don't think Westbrook has that ability. I don't particularly think Harden has that ability. Steph, none of those guys. I think he's in a very rare class in terms of his offensive talent and his court vision. But it is a little bit alarming, I guess, for Denver Nuggets fans that he's not more of a defender because he does have the size to be a good defender. I know he's not particularly athletic or anything like that, but you don't always have to be able to jump out of the gym to be a good defender. So I think because this was, I think it's a little embarrassing that this happened to him. If I were him or if I were a Denver Nuggets fan, is that at the end of that game against the Timberwolves, he was subbed out of the game when the Nuggets were on defense in favor of Mason Plumlee because Mason Plumlee is a better defender.
Okay.
And obviously, like that, I specifically remember Mike Malone doing that, subbing out Nikola Jokic for Mason Plumlee for a defensive possession.
Good eye. I didn't even notice.
Yeah, that was in overtime. I think what he's in the same boat. He just definitely needs to make a stride defensively before he really enters the upper conversations. And then I'm not sure off the top of my head how good of a 3-point shooter he is, but if he's able to expand on his ability to shoot the three just so he can score a little bit more, because I think he's around 16 points per game. If he can get to like 19 or 20, because obviously he's doing a great job with rebounding and assists. So if he can just get his scoring up there a little bit and his defense up there, his scoring job just a smidge, and then his make an improvement on his defense, then he's going to be a force as well. But he's extremely talented. He was really if he wasn't playing in that game, I wouldn't have even been worried, honestly. But I just know that he's capable of doing some crazy things. I think he holds the record for the fastest triple-double recorded ever. So.
Oh my God! Really?
He recorded it, I think, in 13 minutes, 14 minutes.
Well, that'll do it. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was in the second quarter, so it's pretty quick.
Wow, that's really cool. I didn't know that. I would have thought it'd be Russell Westbrook or something.
It was before he did it this season.
Okay.
I think Westbrook set it with like 16 or 17, and then Jokic broke it this year with like 15 or 14 or something like that. Something close to that.
Gotcha. Well, that's really incredible. And yeah, Jokic, the sky's literally the limit with him. He is an incredible player. And just watching the first half and seeing some of those 3-pointers that he was just knocking down easily, that was really incredible to see. And it just stretches out the team so much. And Denver's always had an incredible offense, and even in this game, I thought they played really good defense. They really played tight with them. They really stymied them in the paint, and it was really cool to see these two teams play good defense against what are very good offenses for both of them. But something I'm curious to see what you think about, because I'm honestly not sure. Do you think Mike Malone should be fired after this season?
I mean, honestly, I would say yes, but not because I feel like he did a subpar job. I feel like he did a good job with what he had because, Millsap was supposed to be a starting power forward, and he ended up missing a bunch of games. So I can't really fault him for it, but at the same time, I feel like Denver is in that situation where, because I'm not sure if you remember, but I think it was in 2014, the Golden State Warriors were the 6th seed in the Western Conference, and they made they were a really top-notch defensive team, but the problem with them was that they had good offensive talent, but they were never really able to piece the two things together to become contenders. And then they fire Mark Jackson, they bring in Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr unlocks the potential of their offense, and then they go from being a 6th seed to a 67-win first seed with an MVP and winning the championship. So I think Denver, what they need is kind of the reverse of that. I think they need a coach. Not that Mark Jackson was doing a bad job with Golden State, but in the same way, Mike Malone's not doing a bad job with Denver. I just think that they should bring in a coach who can really unlock the potential of their defense because that's really all they're missing as a team. Because I remember last season, or maybe it was the season before. It was last season when both the Houston Rockets and the Golden State Warriors were having phenomenal regular seasons. Denver, once they replaced Yusuf, once they began starting Nikola Jokic, once he entered the starting lineup, from that point they had the best offense in the league ahead of Golden State and Houston.
Yeah, that's right.
This was last season when obviously, and this was in a season when Golden State they had the 3rd greatest offensive efficiency of all time. So, and Houston had set the 3-point record, I believe. So I really just think that. Not because Mike Malone's doing a bad job, but just because it's time for them to move on to take the next step. Because I think it's clear at this point that Mike Malone has been coaching this team, I think, for 3-4 years now. I'm not exactly sure, but or maybe it's been longer than that. But just since I've been watching basketball, I'm pretty sure he's been the head coach of the Nuggets, and they haven't made the playoffs. They really haven't been able to take that next step, into being, like a solid team in the Western Conference. They always and it's weird it's a weird case because Denver is one of those teams that like they're always able to play anybody. Like they're known for being one of the teams. Since the Golden State spike in success, they're one of the teams that always gives Golden State the challenge. Denver's one of those teams. Utah's one of those teams. And the Spurs are one of those teams. So I think Denver really all they really need to do, in my opinion, is end up. They just have to find some sort of way to get a coach, or you maybe surround Mike Malone with a coaching staff that really knows defense. Because when I look at their roster, there are players like Will Barton, obviously has the potential to be a good defender. Gary Harris is a pretty good defender. Jamal Murray is still a young, long, he's a young, long guard. He can play defense. Paul Millsap obviously can play defense. He's a little older now, but I'm sure he still has something in there. Jokic, I'm sure, can play defense. Plumlee can, if Jokic has the ability to, because of his size. Plumlee can play defense, and maybe they could just bring in some bench guys along with either a new coach or getting a new staff for Mike Malone. But I would say, honestly, I wouldn't say he should be fired, but if I were the Denver Nuggets, I would fire him just because I feel like it's time to move on. Because like you can't waste your young players' years like this, because if they just keep losing and not making the playoffs, they're not really going to want to play in Denver, because there's not that much incentive to playing in Denver in terms of a night like for attraction or anything like that. Kind of like because if it was a situation in Los Angeles or Miami or New York, people don't really always want to leave those cities. So, but Denver, I don't think anyone would have that much regret leaving.
Yeah, no, and I pretty much agree with you on all points. The Mark Jackson comparison is fantastic here, because aside from the Warriors being better in that case, this is a team that just does not have any strong defense right now. Like, it has some players that are good at it, obviously Gary Harris, Mason Plumlee, as you said. Like, it just does not have a good scheme right now for defense, and it's not 7 seconds or less that they're running, but they're just trying to outrun the players on the court, especially when they're at home, when they can count on their stamina to be better than other teams. And that's something that's ultimately not conducive to defense. And it seems like they're ultimately going to have to shift that if they want more production from that. And it seems like Mike Malone isn't the right coach for that. Personally, I think Mike Malone's done a great job rebuilding this franchise. I think he's done a great job. And because I don't know the name of the GM, I'm going to assume that mostly comes from him. It was complete BS that he got fired from the Kings 2 years ago for George Karl. That was one of the worst coaching changes I've seen in a while, and it's almost solely the reason why I think Randy Tivek is one of the worst owners in terms of basketball operations in the league. But
was that Malone? Was it the former coach of the?
Yeah, Mike
Kings?
Malone. Yeah, you remember DeMarcus
Karl.
Yeah,
and then it was Dave Yeager.
Yes,
You're right.
Yeah, I remember, because DeMarcus Cousins is always talking about how Mike Malone's the best coach he ever had, and he was so pissed.
Yeah. I do recall that, because he said he had a new head coach every year he was in Sacramento, and then he said only one of them was good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense.
And obviously he's probably better than what's his name, Alvin Gentry at this point. But yeah, no, it seems like the ownership has to move on. It's just kind of forcing their hand, which absolutely sucks. Maybe if you can bring Mike Malone back in the front office or something, but obviously Mike's going to want to go coach somewhere. So that sucks, but it's kind of out of their control at this point. If you don't get production out of this creative youth, and I get that you win 46 games, but ultimately you got to make the playoffs, and it sucks, but whatever. And you never know. This could be another situation like the 13-14 Suns, where they win 48 games, miss the playoffs, and then the next 2 years they suck and they have to fire Hornacek.
Yeah, I think it's weird. The thing with Mike Malone is he really has I feel like he would just be better served being an assistant coach for you know what I mean? Because
for an offense.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like how Thibodeau was so great as as a defensive assistant coach for those Boston Celtics teams and all that. I don't really because it's kind of apparent to me that Denver they don't really commit that much to defense. It was good to see them do it against the Timberwolves, because you really don't see it that often.
Yeah.
Most of Denver's notable wins are always pretty high scoring games, either in the 1-teens or the high 109. It's somewhere in the range of 105 to 130 or something like that. You get high scoring games from them because of the pace at which they play.
Yes.
I'm not sure where they rank in pace, but just the fact that they love to run, like you said, because they play in Denver. But I think the most interesting thing about Denver is that I was reading an article a couple months ago, and it said that if you look at Denver, they're kind of they're like the one team that's they kind of have the most potential to kind of they have the most potential to be an organically built championship team in the way that Golden State was, because Golden State didn't go out and acquire big free agents. I'm talking about pre-signing Kevin Durant, prior to
Yeah.
signing Kevin Durant. Like they didn't really tank to get extremely high draft picks. They didn't attract big free agents. They didn't do anything like that. They had a good front office that drafted players and fit them into a good system that worked for them. So I was seeing comparisons because, Draymond Green was a second-round pick who was extremely versatile. Nikola Jokic is a second-round pick who's extremely versatile. Jamal Murray was a seventh pick in the draft. He's a really good shooter. Steph Curry was a seventh pick in the draft. He's a really good shooter. Gary Harris was somewhere around 11, and he's a really good shooter and two-way player. And Klay Thompson is a really good shooter and two-way player. So obviously it's not the same because, Steph Curry has blown to be something that nobody could have expected. But, if Jamal Murray ends up growing into becoming, like a 22, 23, 24 point per game scorer, and, Gary Harris next to him can become somewhere around that too, maybe 18 to 22 or something like that. And then obviously Nikola Jokic, his development is already ahead of schedule. You just have to become better defensively. There were people that believe with their talent on offense, if they just got some sort of kick on defense or some spark on defense, had some sort of player that could kind of anchor their defense or anything like that, then they could really shift into that sort of stratosphere just because they were organically built and they had a good system. And I think, I think 2 years ago, it really caught a lot of people's attention how well they were performing offensively, because they were ahead of Golden State and Houston, which was obviously astronomical to think of at the time, or last year, sorry.
Oh yeah, 100%. And you know what? At this point, I think all we have to say to you Nuggets is we bid you adieu from the playoffs. You did a good job, and we look forward to your next couple years because you've got a lot of potential.
Indeed.
All right, so that's the Nuggets, and we'll get into the Timberwolves more when we are talking about their series against the Rockets that's coming up. Unfortunately, the eventual slaughter. So at this point, we'll probably get in. Well, not probably. We are going to get into the playoff matchups at long last. With weeks of build-up, the playoffs have been something that's been on our minds this entire regular season, frankly. Luckily, we had a nice last week of the regular season to set up what we can only hope for in an amazing first round. And you know what? I don't think any of these playoff matchups were what we were really expecting. Even going into the last day of the season, it seems like they all got flipped at the very end.
I will say, honestly, I was very, very, very upset that Golden State matched up with San Antonio, because I believe that's aside from getting I don't want to say it's the easiest, but it's one of the easier ones. They didn't get the Wolves, they didn't get the Thunder, and they didn't get New Orleans. Of the teams that they could have gotten, I think they ended up getting San Antonio, who comes in at its because if you had to play the Thunder in the first round, that's a highly emotional series for Kevin Durant. He's known to have he's extremely he has all sorts of weird reactions and emotions when he plays in Oklahoma City. He always gets up in Russell Westbrook's face and he always gets involved. So that would just and they would be without Steph Curry, and the thing with that is it would even though Carmelo Anthony's not even really considered a star anymore, I guess at this point we can consider Steven Adams close to a star because of how good he is. Those teams both have 3 stars. There's Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Steven Adams / Carmelo Anthony, and then on Golden State you have Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and Steph and Kevin Durant. Sorry, Steph Curry being out for that series. I thought that would have been very difficult for them in the first round. New Orleans, Anthony Davis, they present something completely different because Rajon Rondo, despite what people think about him, is still an amazing playmaker. Drew Holiday is a great two-way player. Anthony Davis is obviously a monster. He's, in my opinion, one-on-one, in individual matchups when he's played Kevin Durant this season, has outperformed Kevin Durant. He beat him a couple nights ago, last week. He beat him last week pretty convincingly, even though Kevin Durant had 41 points. Anthony Davis was just too much because he was doing it on both ends, because when Durant has really good offensive nights, he typically doesn't have great defensive nights, because even though he's getting called a two-way player, he's really not two-way on most nights. Then they didn't get the Timberwolves, which I think Karl Anthony Towns would be a huge matchup problem for Golden State. Jimmy Butler would be able to give Kevin Durant a little bit of trouble and make things not as easy for him. And Utah obviously is playing fantastically. Golden State would have absolutely no answer for Rudy Gobert. And he's probably the most unique player in the Western Conference in terms of who they could have faced, because now to me, like this facing the Spurs to me just means it's a half court battle between because since the Warriors don't have Steph Curry, they're not going to be playing at a fast pace. They're not going to be playing that much full court. They're going to be playing more in half court, and the Spurs prefer to do that anyway because their best player, LaMarcus Aldridge, prefers to play in a half court set. So it's going to be a half court set battle between Kevin Durant and LaMarcus Aldridge, and unfortunately, I will have to take Kevin Durant in that pretty easily.
Oh yeah, like at this point, like this entire series has just gotten soiled by the fact that Kawhi still has not come back. And obviously he's not coming back for the playoffs, regardless of what happens. That'd be a horrible choice for Greg Popovich. Bring him back in the middle of it. We saw that went with the Knicks a couple years ago with Amari Stoudemire. So Kawhi, he apparently missed this entire season. I can't believe it.
He played 9 games briefly. That's it.
Oh yeah.
In January, but it didn't count for anything. He averaged like 16 points per game.
Yeah, it's a real shame. So, okay, I didn't plan for this, but I think this is actually a better idea for each of us to give a. No, let's not. I was thinking we could each give a summary of what we expect from the series, but going through the outline is probably going to just give it to us anyways. So, as we've been alluding to in previous weeks, we're going to go through the matchups for every position. We're going to go for point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. Then go through the bench, highlighting interesting players that we've seen. Go through the coaching matchup and the different philosophies, how it's going to come up in the game. Then we're going to talk about who our favorite is to win, like who we actually want to win the game. Then we're going to talk about what the favorite has to do to win the game. So, like, as in, like, the team with the higher seeding, because for the most part, they're the favorite in all of these series, except for maybe that Celtics one that we'll eventually get to. What the underdog needs to do to win, what we're most excited to see, and then our actual prediction. So let's get started on the Warriors versus Spurs. Starting at point guard, we have Sean Livingston versus Patty Mills. So who do you have coming out in this one?
I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Steve Kerr is choosing to start Quinn Cook in Steph Curry's absence.
Oh, no, I know. Sorry, I forgot to mention this. I'm going to be using win shares as a barometer for who I think Steve Kerr should be starting anyways.
Oh, who do you think he should be starting?
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, regardless of whether or not it's Sean Livingston or Quinn Cook, I think I would give the advantage there to Patty Mills because even though he's very small, he's very tenacious. He's a pretty good defender, and he's a really good team player. He's a really good three-point shooter. He's good at getting in the passing lanes, disrupting plays. He kind of reminds me a little bit of like a smaller version of Matthew Dellavedova from a couple years ago when he was getting Steph Curry a lot of hell in the 2015 finals. I mean, Sean Livingston, obviously, he'd be able to shoot over him in the mid-range all day, but Sean Livingston is a little bit like his game is sort of, even though he's a very good player and he's very long and all that, I think his age has kind of caught up to him a little bit. He's not as good defensively as he was when the Warriors have made their runs in the past. He hasn't been nearly as productive. He obviously has no outside shot whatsoever. And, him being able to come in and shoot mid-range jumpers is only going to be so effective. So I don't really see him being that much of a factor in the series. And, Quinn Cook is, well, he's had some amazing regular season games. Those regular season games have been absolutely meaningless, and they've been, they've all come in a stretch where no team is really putting forth their best effort.
Yeah.
Every team was just he's put up good numbers, but they've had some ugly losses. They lost by 20 to the Pacers. They lost by 40 to the Jazz. In there, I would give Patty Mills. And then the next shooting guard, I believe, would be Klay Thompson against Danny Green.
I have DeJounte Murray, actually.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think regularly Popovich what he chooses to do is he plays DeJounte Murray at point guard, Danny Green at shooting guard, and brings Patty Mills off the bench. But regardless, I'll just say a brief something about both. Obviously, I've got Klay Thompson the advantage against both. Klay Thompson's a phenomenal two-way player, and he's a phenomenal shooter. His thumb injury really hasn't seemed to set him back. He's kind of been typical Klay, where he has some good games and some bad games. Most of them are good though. It really hasn't hindered his ability to play defense. DeJounte Murray, I don't think at this point in his career he's very young still. He's a very good defender, but he's really not that skilled on offense. He's not a fantastic playmaker, not a fantastic shooter, not a fantastic scorer. He really is more of a defensive player. He's very long though, which but that to me that doesn't really give Klay Thompson that much trouble because Klay Thompson doesn't create his own shots. He just kind of catches the ball and shoots the ball for open shots.
Yeah.
And DeJounte Murray will probably be able to contest a lot of those much better, but Klay Thompson has been knocking down contested shots for the longest time. So And then if it's Danny Green, it literally just be Klay Thompson versus a version of himself that's not nearly as good as he is. Danny Green's a great two-way player too, but he's not nearly as good a shooter as Klay Thompson is. And I haven't really been watching him enough to know whether or not how good he's been defensively. I know he did make an all defensive team last season, and Klay Thompson didn't. So, but this season, I'm not really sure how good Danny Green has been defensively. So.
Yeah, and it seems like for the most part, it's just a worse version of him defensively, just because we haven't been hearing about him. So yeah, it seems like a clear win for the Warriors in terms of shooting guard, and then just for my feelings on point guard, I think it's actually super close, to be honest. I like Patty Mills as a player a lot. I believe there's like some metric where he plays at the fastest, like literally meters per second in the entire league, just over his playing time. So he's one of the fastest players. Obviously, Sean Livingston being one of the longest, and not really much to say about Quinn Cook, to be honest. So I would say that position's just a wash, and it's going to come down to which player just gets hot and which player just stays cold and doesn't provide as much to the team.
I agree with you, but I think the interesting thing to note, though, is Sean Livingston's hot is always going to be it's never going to produce as much as Patty Mills hot because Patty Mills can shoot the three.
Yeah, good point.
Offensively, at least. Defensively, Sean Livingston would by a mile would be better with hot defensively just because he's literally 6'7". And he plays point guard. And his arms are so long. I'm not sure what his wingspan is, but I'm sure it's pretty long.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous, and like I'm sure it is. I'll look it up later, but yeah, he's like 6'6". He's literally like the tallest point guard in the league, and most of the time, I don't even know if he lines up at shooting guard that often, but he probably should just with how tall he is.
Yeah, I think the only reason because Klay Thompson's also 6'7", so it's kind of like whatever. But small forward then would be what Kevin Durant and
Kyle Anderson.
Oh gosh, that's a massacre.
Yeah.
Kyle Anderson is an underrated player. I give him credit. He's a good defensive player. He can shoot some threes, but I don't really think that there's that much that needs to be said that Kevin Durant is better.
Yeah, I actually think he can do a little to slow down Kevin Durant, but I think this
defensively,
is just
yes. But he's very tall. I think he's like 6'9", right?
Yeah, and like he has a great reach, and like he was on my All NBA defensive team, and we'll eventually get into those again, probably around awards season.
Yeah, I haven't watched him enough to know that, but. Kevin Durant's just his ability to make shots from everywhere. He's taller. He's so tall, and he can make shots from anywhere on the floor. But I will say, however, if they catch Durant cold for one night or two nights, this series could go maybe 6 games.
Yeah.
Just because the Spurs. While I made the comment earlier about a half court set, I would have to take Kevin Durant over LaMarcus Aldridge. If Kevin Durant is cold and LaMarcus Aldridge is going and the Spurs defense is clicking on all cylinders, then I don't think you can ever count on a Popovich team, regardless of who's on the team.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you there. Sean Livingston has a 7-foot reach.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's absurd.
That is absurd.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, that's shocking actually. But yeah, I would still. If the series could it could be interesting if Kevin Durant is cold for a game or two, but seeing as that that depends on multiple things. I have to take Kevin Durant in that matchup.
Yeah, I definitely would too. And honestly, I think a good comparison for this one would be the LeBron James versus Kawhi Leonard in the 2012-2013 finals, where Kawhi Leonard won the MVP. That doesn't mean I think that the Spurs are going to beat the Warriors here, but I think it's going to be
the year after. Because Kawhi was Finals MVP in 2014.
Okay, yeah, whatever. I don't remember the exact year. Just the one he won.
Okay, when he played really good defense on him. You're saying Kyle Anderson. You think he could have a coming out party defensively? Like it's possible?
Well, no, I think more in line of your point where Kawhi Leonard won that Finals MVP despite LeBron James getting like 22 points a game.
28, yeah.
Yeah, so like even more.
Yeah. It's like he was awarded it because he was defending LeBron and he did the best job of his team defending the best player who should have won the Finals MVP, but they can't give him the Finals MVP because he lost. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I expect good defensive contributions out of him, not much offense, because I think Kawhi Leonard got, like, 10 points per game in that series. Like, he was just a non-factor on offense. And, yeah, obviously, I don't have high expectations for the Spurs overall in the series. So after,
and then our forward would be, what, LaMarcus and Draymond?
Yeah.
All right. So, this is interesting because I know a lot of people love to praise Draymond Green's versatility, but I, however, I'm not a blind witness, and I see his inabilities on the court when Steph Curry is not playing. I see how much his production drops off. I see his inability to actually lead his team to being productive against anybody that's not the Phoenix Suns. So I'm going to LaMarcus Aldridge because even though LaMarcus Aldridge isn't a phenomenal defender, he's large. He's bigger than Draymond, so he's not going to have that much of an issue backing him down to get the shots that he wants. And Draymond Green is probably going to get frustrated and get a technical foul, or and because that's just what he does when he's playing another gritty defensive team. It used to happen when he played Memphis all the time. So, I feel like if Draymond Green gets a little bit challenged, he's going to throw a fit, and I think it's going to give LaMarcus Aldridge a little bit of a mental edge because he's a really cool, calm, and collected player. He doesn't really, he doesn't complain, and he doesn't yell, and he doesn't get technical fouls, and he doesn't start up an issue with the refs or anything. So I'm going to give LaMarcus the edge because I think he's a more skilled player, and I think he's going to have a mental edge. I don't necessarily think that he's a more versatile player because he's not the playmaker or defender that Draymond is, but he's about as good a rebounder, and he's a much better scorer, and he has much more offensive talent. I don't even think that's close. And just give all of that, given the fact that Draymond Green really is, he produces much less in terms of his assists and his scoring and his shooting percentages when Steph Curry is not playing, unless, of course, they're playing the Phoenix Suns. Because I know any Warriors fan would just say, oh, look at that one game that he played against Phoenix where he had like 29 points, 10 rebounds, and like 7 assists or whatever. But, I mean, they were playing the Suns, so.
Yeah, and that final point that you just made, that's why I'm actually picking LaMarcus Aldridge as well. If Steph Curry was in this series, I would pick Draymond Green over LaMarcus Aldridge, but because he's not getting the outlet passes or the passes into the post, I don't think Draymond Green is going to be as effective as he has been in the regular season. Obviously, excluding the games that Steph Curry wasn't there because Steph Curry missed a ton of games. But LaMarcus Aldridge, secretly, he's been becoming a very good passer out of the center position, and like you can. Even the power forward also, but just in the post is really what I mean. Just passing out to open 3-point shots, and he's secretly become that because a lot of people still think that he's just some bruiser and like he goes into the post, he's just smashing the person, and then like he just passes it out like he's some kind of triangle player. But no, he's becoming a really good, not new center because like he's not taking the 3-point shots, but outside of that, like he's been really adopting a good passing, and Draymond Green, he does drop off significantly when Steph Curry's not on the court. We talked about this in an earlier podcast where Steph Curry, when he's not on the court, Kevin Durant's averages go down, Klay Thompson's go down, Draymond Green's go down. Interestingly, JaVale McGee's goes up, so I don't really know what happens there. But he's not really a factor in this series, so yeah, I pick LaMarcus Aldridge there. And moving on to center, we have Zaza Pachulia, Mr. I Injured League myself, and Paul Gasol, if he ever gets healthy, that is.
I think it's Pau Gasol.
Okay, cool.
I think he's just better at, I guess, everything except injuring other players. Even though he's old, he's much more skilled. He's a really good 3-point shooter now that he's older. He's still a good rebounder. I'm not really sure how much he can do defensively because he is 36. But, I mean, I'll take that over the fact that Zaza just has good skills. So.
Yeah, I would as well. There's not much to Zaza Pachulia. Like, maybe he can dunk the ball occasionally. But honestly, I like JaVale McGee over him.
Yeah, JaVale McGee gives them much more athleticism, depth. Like, because he can go catch lobs. He can get some energy going for the team. He can build some momentum. He can make good defensive plays because he can block shots. Zaza just can't do any of that thing. I mean, Zaza, like, the possession will almost be over by the time Zaza makes it to the possession.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is interesting that Steve Kerr's been starting Zaza over JaVale so often. But why do you think that is?
I think it's because putting JaVale, like, I think it's for when he brings all those players off the bench, or when he brings players off the bench, he kind of wants an energy boost. Because if you started JaVale, you kind of have all of your energy in the starting lineup, because then you really don't have a spark plug who comes off the bench. Because if you look at the Golden State Warriors bench this season, they really don't have anyone other than like Nick Young, who's really explosive, I guess, but he's really not even that. He can just kind of shoot threes. So
yeah, so that's our positions. We have basically a wash on. Well, no, I'm not going to recap because I'm just going to give my opinions. You guys decide for yourself based on what we said, what you actually think of them. But just to go over some highlights from the bench, essentially I just went to Basketball Reference, and literally any name that I recognized I just listed here. So I have for the Warriors David West, Andre Iguodala, JaVale McGee, Omri Caspi, Quinn Cook, and Nick Young. And then for the Spurs, I have Rudy Gay, David Bertans, Danny Green, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker.
Well, And just a slight correction there. Omri Caspi was actually cut before the playoffs.
He was?
Yeah.
What?
What happened was the Warriors decided to sign Quinn Cook to a long-term deal, and in order to make space for them to do that, because Quinn Cook was signed to a two-way contract, I believe, they had to sign him to a real contract, which resulted in them having to cut Omri Caspi's contract. So, Omri Caspi has never played in a playoff game, and this was going to be the first year that he was going to, but unfortunately, he will not.
Well, I'm going to ask you then. Do you think that was a good decision?
I honestly, I don't know.
I don't.
It seems validated because Quinn Cook has had a couple good games, but Omri Caspi he's a good NBA veteran. He's a really good shooter.
Yeah, I know. And that's what the Warriors need.
Yeah, it's an interesting decision, but I mean, I don't really know. I didn't see much of Omri this year, so I'm not really sure. But overall, I think I'm going to have to give the edge to the Spurs bench because Manu Ginobili, even though he's 40 years old, is still playing really well. In his given time, he's closing games really well for the Spurs. I saw a brief clip of him on offense, and he was I'm not sure what team he was playing, but he drove by a defender who was like 20 years younger than him, and then he just kind of he very skillfully scored on a player who was like much younger than him as well. So, and also it's he came up with really big defensive plays last season in the playoffs. I feel like Manu Ginobili is also, even though he's much older, he is one of those players who definitely preserves his best for the playoffs. So he's underrated for his age. Tony Parker, I believe, is the same way. Even though he's not that old, he kind of he obviously has that old man persona to him because of how long he's been playing and how championships he's won and how much experience he has. So just in terms of his veteran savvy, I think he has a little bit of an edge over everyone on Golden State's bench except maybe Sean Livingston and Andre Iguodala because they're veterans as well. Because I really don't have any faith in Nick Young's basketball IQ, and I don't have any faith in his experience because he's really just kind of a silly player who's really just there so he can win a championship. Like he's not there because he made fun of Golden State Warriors fans on Twitter in 2016, and then he joined them the next season. So, and then Andre Iguodala and Sean Livingston have really declined this season. So. Those being their two best players off the bench in recent years when they've been able to make some noise in the playoffs. I'm going to give the edge to the Spurs bench, but slightly because Golden State is younger and more athletic. I just think that for the playoffs, when the pace slows down and things like athleticism and all that stuff don't matter as much, I think it's always better to have a veteran bench than it is to have a young bench.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili maybe in the regular season it'd be more of a concern how old they are, but considering how well Manu's been playing over the past couple of weeks and Tony Parker not falling off because of his age, obviously he's fallen off since 10 years ago, Tony Parker, but just not depreciating that much over the course of the season. I definitely think this playoffs is setting up a good performance out of them, and I agree. It seems like they can outpace the Warriors bench as long as they can keep pace with Freeze. I know David Bertans likes to take Freeze occasionally. Danny Green's pretty good about it. Manu, obviously, he's been awesome with it. I have no clue what they've been getting out of Rudy Gay, but it seems like they can keep pace there. So really, it's going
to. I kind of thought that he would be a really underrated addition this offseason, but he disappointed me a little bit. I feel like he should probably be starting just because of his talent. Because I feel like him and LaMarcus Aldridge would be able to make Rudy Gay wouldn't be able to replace Kawhi, but he would be the best option to replace Kawhi, in my opinion. But I'm not sure how he is defensively. He's 6'8" and he's long, so I feel like he would have the potential to be a good defender, especially in a Popovich system. But maybe he's just been hurt this year. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either because he's one of those guys that I always really like to follow because he's always under the radar as being one of the clutchest players in the NBA, and I mean actual clutch, not just ooh, he's clutch. He literally has one of the best shooting percentages in the last minute of the game, one of the best in terms of just shots made versus shots attempted as the game-winning shot, which is really interesting because nobody thinks of the Kings, that clutch team, or Rudy Gay.
He played on the Kings for a while.
Yeah, I know, and with the Grizzlies as well. So he's one of those grit and grind guys that we always love, and the Spurs always love to pick off the Grizzlies. But yeah, he's a really fun player. I have no clue why he hasn't been better this season, to be honest. But hey, we'll find out in the playoffs, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that pretty much goes over the bench. I think in terms of coaching, because I know you wanted to get to that.
Yeah.
Popovich over Kerr.
Oh yeah.
There's no doubt in either of our minds. I don't think. Kerr is a product of Popovich. He learned how to coach under Popovich. And I don't think that we're at that point where, student becomes better than the master just because the student has three all-stars and the master has basically, almost has one. LaMarcus Aldridge was the last pick in the all-star draft, so um,
Yeah, and
yeah.
like Kerr's completely overmatched in this category. Popovich is better at drawing up plays. He's better at scheming. He's better at knowing when to put people in, take people out, and he's better at just managing game egos. Like I don't see an aspect where Steve Kerr can really be better. Maybe looking younger, but like that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also, like Popovich is also better with his timeout selection.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Steve Kerr is always praised for is his out of timeout plays, but I'm pretty sure those are all derived from Popovich plays because he literally worked under Popovich for like so long before he became a head coach. And just a little side note about Steve Kerr. I don't know why no one ever talks about the fact that he's a completely failed executive in this league, but anyways.
Yeah, poor Steve Kerr. And
yeah.
I mean, at least he's back from injury. I was worried that like his back stuff was gonna just to start derailing his coaching career, but luckily he's
No, that's good. I like him as a guy. I think he's overrated as a coach. I don't think he should have been coach of the year that one year in 2016 when we were both pushing heavily for Terry Stotts.
Yeah,
that definitely should have been his, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, at least not right now. So then we'll get into what we think the favorite in this series, the Warriors, the number 2 seed, needs to do to win. For me, it's just play to their true talent and not get head coached. I'd assume it's about the same for you.
Yeah, for me, what the Warriors need to do to win is literally Durant just has to not choke.
Yeah.
That's all. Like, there's absolutely no reason, and there's no excuse. There's no reason whatsoever that the Warriors should lose. They have better talent. They on paper have better everything. They have 3 all-stars. The other team has a borderline all-star in LaMarcus Aldridge, who just happened to make it this year but didn't make it last year.
Yeah.
So there's no reason the Warriors shouldn't win this series in a comfortable 5 games. But just because of Popovich's greatness, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes 6.
Yeah, what do you think Popovich needs to do to get this team to even like 6 games?
I think that what he needs to do is he needs to do what he did to LeBron James in the 2007 NBA Finals, and he just needs to make Kevin Durant, like he needs to make Kevin Durant like shoot like ridiculously difficult shots, because Popovich held LeBron James. I mean, LeBron James was also 22 years old, so let's not get carried away. But he made LeBron James shoot 36% from the field in that series. LeBron James, he was 22 years old, so I'm not going to kill him for that. But it was still, amazingly impressive because in the regular season, LeBron, I think, averaged close to 50% from the field, and he averaged, I think, 31 points per game that year. So I think Popovich just needs to he needs to bring out his absolute best half-court schemes so that he can close in on Kevin Durant. And in this case, because the Warriors have such limited offense now that Steph Curry isn't there, they only score 105 points per 100 possessions when Steph Curry is not playing.
Yeah.
So I feel like you can afford to leave Klay Thompson, like you can kind of afford to ignore him because Durant is going to have the ball most of the time in his hands, and Durant is not really that savvy of a playmaker to be able to get Klay Thompson open for to shoot like 14, 13 threes. So, it's not going to – basically what Popovich needs to do is if Klay Thompson, if they're playing through Klay, which I imagine they will not do because obviously you have Durant who's better.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll play through Klay, but if they play through Klay and Klay is getting, like a bunch of, if he's getting off like 11 threes and like making like 6 or 7 or 8 of them, then you kind of have to start playing your defense towards the passing lane so Klay can't get the ball. But since I don't think they'll do that, I think all he really needs to do is just, bring the double team on Durant when he's, close to the inside and just really play up on it and make him uncomfortable and just make it kind of like a Durant rules thing, like the Jordan rules, where you just you don't have to double and triple team him, but basically you just make life hell for the best player because no one else on the team is going to be able to beat you, similarly to what he did to LeBron in multiple finals. So if he's able to do that, then they can probably go 6, but just the sheer talent of the Warriors is probably going to be too much to overcome.
Yeah. And a good point was I was looking back at the 2016-2017 Western Conference Finals because that's pretty comparable to what's happening right now, aside from Stephen Curry being on the Warriors right now.
Yeah.
And it was a super close point differential all throughout the 4-game sweep, and frankly, I'm surprised it didn't go 5. Just obviously in the first game when Kawhi Leonard was there, but even game 2, game 3, game 4, it was a super tight series, and like I believe all of them are like it was like 5 or 10 point wins for the Warriors. So like the Spurs were not getting blown out in that series, and I think really that just speaks to the strength of Popovich as a head coach. But I think it's interesting. Like this could be a closer series than we think, just because Stephen Curry isn't here now, and
Yeah.
like I could easily see Popovich getting a game or two off of them. But just in terms of my prediction for the how the series is going to go, I have it going 5 or 6 games. I believe you have it going 5.
Yeah, 5-6 as well.
Okay,
6
so
depending on Popovich.
yeah, and obviously we both want the Spurs to win because we're just trying to avoid that Warriors finals. But what are you most excited to see in this series?
I'm excited to see how LaMarcus Aldridge performs in the half court against Kevin Durant because I feel like he should utilize his. He's not taller, but he's bigger, so he can use his size advantage. I think a little bit to kind of, physical. He can definitely outplay Durant from a physicality standpoint because Durant is not a physical player, but LaMarcus Aldridge, even though he's not some sort of brute like he bashes you all the time, but he definitely does give you some wear and tear. And he makes it tough for the entire so to guard him for the course of an entire game is going to be difficult. And obviously there are going to be times when they're probably like his preferred matchup. Popovich is probably going to get LaMarcus Aldridge switched on to Kevin Durant because just because Draymond Green is stronger, I'm sure he would prefer to have Aldridge on Durant rather than having Aldridge on Green. So or Green on Aldridge and Durant on Aldridge. But I'm just looking forward to LaMarcus Aldridge basically to see whether or not he can really, I guess, kind of back up the fact that the Spurs had so much faith in him signing him a couple years ago. It'll just be interesting to see now because, we all know that he really wanted to be the star when he was in Portland, and now this is his opportunity to be the best player on a playoff team. So, I'm just looking forward to seeing whether or not he can rise to the occasion.
Yeah, for me, I'm really excited to see Manu play. He's been awesome these past couple weeks, as I said, and there's a good case to say without Manu, the Spurs wouldn't be in the playoffs right now just because of how well he's played and like just the incredible performances. I believe like one of them he had like 10 points in the fourth quarter, and like he's just it's been really impressive what he's done. So I'm really excited to see how he does. And then I'm really excited to see how Rudy Gay performs because even before talking here, I just know nothing about Rudy Gay, but I think he's a good player. So I want to see what he does.
Yeah. Also, I will just add this before we move on to the next series. Earl Watson did pick the Spurs to win this series.
That's why he's not a head coach anymore.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when he said it too. But the reason he gave for it was because he just didn't think that the Warriors would be able to figure out. Like, he felt that if the Warriors got anyone else, they would have been able to figure it out. But he just thinks that Popovich is so smart and so good that he's going to be able to exploit the hell out of the fact that they don't have Steph Curry and just make it complete hell for Kevin Durant, which will essentially just remove him from the series, which will result in the Spurs winning in like a really gritty 6 or 7 games. But again, that's neither here nor there. So we can move on to the next series.
And I think you can make a case that the Warriors might lose in the next round, but not right now.
Yeah, I think they'll comfortably get out of the first round.
Yeah. So next series we have the 1v8 matchup in the East, the Raptors versus the Wizards. It's an exciting matchup, not really, because the Raptors are going to absolutely demolish the Wizards. I don't even know how they're in the playoffs right now, but we'll treat them as if they're a proper playoff team anyways. They got their winning record. I can't complain too much with what the Eastern Conference has shown out of their 6 or 8 seeds in the past couple of years. So I guess we'll start with point guard with Kyle Lowry versus John Wall.
I mean, John Wall's just coming off an injury. I'm not expecting much from him. He is not good in the clutch. He's just really not. Last year, he had I think the last playoff game he played, which was Game 7 against the Celtics last year, he went 0 for 11 in the fourth quarter, which is awful. And he is just he hit a clutch jump shot in Game 6, and then because the Celtics wore all black to the game, indicating that it was a funeral. And he said, "Don't come to my city wearing all black." And then he won that game. And then the next game he went to Boston. He went to their city, and then he got wiped off the floor. So I don't have that much faith in John Wall. I just don't think that he's a very good player. He's a very versatile player, but I just don't think that he's a very smart player. He always makes silly decisions. Just the other night he was driving and he had an open layup and he turned around and threw the pass back out for no reason, and then they ended up getting picked off, and as a result they lost the game. So I don't have faith in John Wall. But at the same time, this is an interesting situation because I don't have that much faith in Kyle Lowry either, because he has given me absolutely no reason to have any faith in him,
Oh yeah.
in the playoffs at least. But just because, I guess, just for the sake of having to pick one, I will pick Kyle Lowry just because, more experience. And to some degree, I feel like, at some point you have to not, like, there will eventually come a point where you won't be bad in the playoffs because he's had like 2 bad years in a row. So I think he'd have to either be completely afraid of the spotlight or completely bad on national TV because he seems to always play bad on national TV. Or he just has extremely bad luck. So I'm going to choose Kyle Lowry in this matchup simply because he does have a lot of bulldog. He has a lot of bulldog-like intensity in him. He plays real defense even though he's undersized. He's a better three-point shooter, which is obviously more important in today's NBA. And defense and three-point shooting is what they'll need. And the thing is with John Wall I think is expected to carry more of a load on his team because he's seen as the best player of his team, whereas Kyle Lowry is sort of seen as the second best player on his team next to DeMar DeRozan. So I'll favor Kyle Lowry, but slightly.
Yeah, if this
And
was
mostly because John is coming off an injury.
yeah, good point. And if this was the normal Wizards team that you usually see in the playoffs, with like the 3 seed or the 4 seed, and they're coming off a hot end to the regular season and they're looking strong, then I would choose John Wall just because of Kyle Lowry's recent performances in the playoffs and just how untrustworthy he is at that point. You're absolutely right. I can't trust the fact that the Wizards have been horrible in like the past 10 or 12 games. I was listening to the lab today, and they were saying that the Wizards have gone like 9 out of 12 games have been losses, or like maybe even something worse than that. So like
They were playing very well before John Wall. I mean, they were playing very well for a certain stretch because Bradley Beal was playing lights out. But they've really come back down to earth. They're nothing big.
yeah, like at a certain point, you have to think that if the Pistons weren't like just so down in the dumps, they could have actually snuck into the playoffs just because of how much the Wizards have fallen off. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's essentially why I'm picking Kyle Lowry. Hopefully, he doesn't disappoint us because I do want to see this Raptors team finally live up to its potential from the regular season. But we'll see. And another position that's really going to determine that is shooting guard, where we have DeMar DeRozan versus Bradley Beal.
I'll take DeMar DeRozan. I think he's a better player. I mean, I'm not really. He's bigger. He's longer. He has more potential. I guess the only distinct advantage that Bradley Beal has, I believe, is the fact that he's a better 3-point shooter. DeMar DeRozan has more skill. He can take you off the dribble. He can get you in the mid range. He can drive to the cup. He's athletic. And overall, he's just had a really good season. I think it's been really under the radar because, especially lately, because the Raptors, in their I think they lost like 5 of their last 7 games, obviously, because, they were basically assured, aside from like a 2-game scare where, they were close with the Celtics, but they basically at home, they've had the first seed in the East locked up, I guess, ever since Kyrie Irving went down with that injury. So I can't really blame them for being a little bit lackadaisical at the end of the regular season. And DeMar DeRozan had a really good season this year. He averaged, I think, like 23 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. And even though he's not a great 3-point shooter, he definitely started taking them. And now he's an improved 3-point shooter than he was last year. I think he went from 29% to 33%, which it's a pretty good improvement. I mean, going off of how bad he was last year, because at least now he's like, because before defenses, when they defended him, was just like you could literally just sag off because you knew he wasn't even going to shoot the 3. But now you have to at least defend him at the 3-point line because if he shoots one and he's wide open, there's a 1 in 3 chance he'll make it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And DeMar DeRozan, yeah, he's been having an awesome season. Like he's it seems like he's finally becoming more willing to take 3-point attempts. Still isn't making them at the rate that I would like, but at least he's trying them now and not just taking mid-range shots every single game. So that's been helpful. Bradley Beal, you know my feelings on Bradley Beal. I'm pretty down on him. I don't think he's that good of a shooting guard. I think he's overrated just because of his playing style and how much he takes threes. Yeah, he's obviously coming off injuries, so that's not good for him. He has a bit of injury history, actually, so hopefully
He does. He missed a good portion of the season a little while ago.
yeah, so hopefully you can get past that stuff. And it's never fun to see those players that are always injured. And yeah, like it seems like
Must be fun with no playoff experience. I think he's like 24, 25.
yeah, he is young. With the NBA, you always forget how young these players are. It's ridiculous.
I know, because I remember I was looking last year, and I think he was 23 or something, and I was pretty surprised because I felt like I'd always seen him. But yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely going to come up in recent years with just how many players are going to be 19 in the league. But yeah, it's obviously DeMar DeRozan, and it seems like he has less of a history with playoff failure, so let's cross our fingers there. But you never know if this Raptors team in this series is going to be so important for making sure that they're not just going to completely collapse.
Yeah, he's come up. DeMar DeRozan has come up small, but he hasn't. I think Kyle Lowry has been more of a consistent disappointment because DeMar will he'll have a down game, but then he usually bounces back. He rarely has consecutive bad games, whereas Kyle Lowry has had awful series.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean that basically summarizes what we think at shooting guard. So then we have small forward, and this one honestly I have no clue who they're starting at small forward for the Raptors. So I just guessed C.J. Miles, and then Otto Porter Jr. for the not the Warriors, the Wizards.
I'm not sure who is starting at small forward. That's a pretty good point, actually. I haven't watched enough Raptors games to really know. So I guess if it's C.J. Miles versus Otto Porter, just because I know Otto Porter is a good two-way player, I know he's tall and he's long, I would give the advantage to him just because I know that he has a lot of upside as a player. So, I mean, I'm just going to give it to him because I think C.J. Miles is a veteran who hasn't really shown all that much.
Yeah, I agree. Like the only good thing about C.J. Miles at this point is he has a good history of being a good 3-point shooter. But Otto Porter Jr. obviously he shot like 45 or 46% last year and led the league, so that's not going to do him any points. I think
Exactly.
I think Otto Porter's a better driver. I think he's better in the mid-range game. He can actually pass it around a little bit, so that's helpful. Obviously,
He's athletic too.
yeah, he's not
And good.
fantastic. Yeah, and he's not a fantastic passer or anything, but how often?
Yeah, I know what you mean. He's not like a. It's not like he's going to dazzle you or anything, but he can make the right pass. I know what you mean.
Yeah, where like C.J. Miles, he's just going to stand on the 3-point line and knock down shots, and that's really all he can do. I don't really know how they both are on defense, so I'll just assume they're both about the same mediocre. So yeah, it goes to Otto Porter Jr. clearly. All
Power
right.
forward, I guess, would be what? I don't even know. Markieff Morris and Pascal Siakam.
I have Serge Ibaka actually.
Oh yeah. You're right. It is definitely Serge because Pascal Siakam comes off the bench.
Yeah.
I think Pascal was starting briefly when Serge was injured or something, but
Okay.
I'll give it to Serge Ibaka. I'm just a fan of him. I feel like he's an interesting player because I genuinely feel like he lied about his age and had his prime sooner. Because, I'm not even lying. Because,
No, I know because he's from the Congo. Yeah.
He averaged 3.5 blocks per game in 2012 when he was supposed, or 2013 when he was supposedly 23, and now all of a sudden he's 28, and I'm supposed to believe that he's all of a sudden just not nearly as good as he was. So to me, that's a little suspicious. I feel like it's more likely that he was 27, 28 then when he was actually in his prime, and now he's just in his 30s and he's just losing his athleticism. But I'll still give it to Serge Ibaka. He can turn it up on defense sometimes. He's still a good team defender. He just doesn't block as many shots as he used to. And he can shoot the three now. He's a pretty versatile two-way player. So I'll give the edge to Serge Ibaka also because Markieff Morris is just the worst of the Morris brothers.
Yeah.
I think he is.
I was going to say, if this is Marcus Morris, I might actually give it to him because I'm a big Marcus Morris fan. But
I like Marcus Morris, but Markieff Morris really hasn't shown me anything.
No.
And I'm still kind of caught up on those conspiracy theories from last year that after the Celtics advanced, that Marquise or when the Wizards, there was some weird thing about how people thought that Markieff Morris was actually playing for Marcus Morris because Marcus Morris was supposedly playing really bad, and people were expecting more from Marcus Morris because he was good. So they were like, "Wow, Markieff, what are you doing?"
That's a pretty good one. And yeah, my problem with Markieff personally is just how he was when if you remember they both played on the Suns together and then
Oh yeah, and he was such a brat about it.
Yeah, exactly. You hear Zach Schumann talk about all the time. Oh, LeBron James is a brat, and I don't like him personally. I don't like Markieff personally because he made such a sting about a stimmy or whatever about just leaving the Suns, and literally for 30 games later, he was like, oh, well, I wish my brother was playing with me, and
Yeah, and he I remember he grabbed his own teammate by the jersey and shook him and stuff. He's just not really. He doesn't really strike me as a really a good teammate or anything like that. So.
Yeah. So yeah, we're both big Ibaka fans there. So hopefully he plays well. And then we have center, which is going to be a really interesting matchup here. We have Jonas Valanciunas, who is always my pick to do better than he actually does, and then Marcin Gortat, Mr. I want to go retire in Orlando.
I don't know. I mean, this is a close one, but I'll give a slight edge to Marcin Gortat just because I think that he has really good chemistry with John Wall, and they really play in the pick and roll. They play in the pick and roll really well together. I know they had a Twitter issue. They got into a fight earlier in the year, but on the court they have pretty good chemistry. And I've seen him step up a little bit for the Wizards, kind of as a locker room guy and as someone who speaks up for them. And I just like him. He seems to play the right way. Even though he's not really the most skilled guy in the world, he he makes up for it. He tries on defense. He tries to get rebounds. He tries to run the pick and roll properly. He tries to dump it in the basket when he gets down low. He's like a really polished version of he's like a super Zaza almost. Like he doesn't really have any like real skills, but he just utilizes his size and his ability, that he can do to do it. So, and Jonas Valanciunas, I like him, but to me, like it's just he's been on the cusp for so long, and he still has yet to show me that he's really a legit player in the league. I think this is his 5th season, and he's just done nothing. I don't even think he's had like a really big game at this point. So nonetheless, a big series. So I'm gonna have to go with Marcin Gortat just for experience and what I've seen and what I think.
Yeah, I actually like that comparison to Zaza a lot. That's pretty interesting. I think Marcin does a little bit more, but I think you understood that as well. And yeah, that's a good point about the chemistry thing. And it's something that I don't want to overlook here is Jonas, along with Kyle Lowry, he also has a history of underperforming in the playoffs. Maybe that's just me because I think that he should be like one of the top 5 centers in the league, but he does not play like it at all. So I might just be conditioned to think that he's always underperforming, but I think he plays a little bit worse in the playoffs.
Yeah, he's weird because like it's kind of like it's weird. It's a weird thing now, like how you look at all these foreign big men, like like Kristaps and like Joel, just all these like and like Lithuanian big men, particularly like Zydrunas Ilgauskas and like even like people. I know I don't think Arvydas Sabonis is from Lithuania, but
no, he is.
He is okay, yeah.
Maybe maybe Latvia. I'll check.
I have like a stigma of like Lithuanian, white tall big men. I feel like they should be good. And
Porzingis is.
Porzingis is very good. He's from Latvia, yeah.
Okay, let me see. Arvydas Sabonis home country, because I don't want to screw up those Balkans. I can't imagine they like Lithuanian. Okay, cool.
He is Lithuanian.
Yeah. I wonder why Estonia is never representing. That's weird. I guess I got they're late to the party or something. I'm sure we'll see an Estonian sooner or later.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay, so that's positional matchups. Then we have the bench. The Wizards one's actually super short. I'll just start with that. The only people I saw in any way notable, I saw Kelly Oubre, who's really good. Don't get me wrong, and then Thomas Satoransky, who's also really good. But unfortunately, that's it for them. And then
they had Jody Meeks up until this morning when he was suspended for 25 games.
Yeah, which I saw, so that's why I knocked him out.
So Thomas Satoransky, he's a good defender, a good playmaker. But I mean, I just don't even think there's a comparison. I feel like the Raptors bench has been amazing all year. They have so much depth from just random guys. Yeah. Like Fred VanVleet has been a fantastic this year. Pascal Siakam, like I mentioned earlier. OG Anunoby, who's a rookie, who's been playing really well under the radar. He's been playing good defense.
Norman Powell, Jakob Poeltl.
Jakob Poeltl is, a pretty good.
Dion Wright even.
Who?
Dion Wright. He's been great.
Delon Wright, yeah.
Oh, oops.
Yeah.
Oh, I spelled that wrong.
That looks like an I, yeah. There's no problem. But Delon Wright, yeah, they're a deep team, and all those players, especially Fred VanVleet, is like a 6 Man of the Year candidate because he's played really big in some big games. So I'm going to give the edge to the Raptors bench easily. Not even because we don't know who the Raptors bench really is, but because the Raptors bench has just been superb all season. Probably the best bench in the league if you can encompass the entire regular season.
Yeah, like the only competitors are the Raptors. Not the Raptors. Yeah, the Raptors are competing against themselves at this point with the Rockets, but obviously it's been the Raptors. All 6 of those players are. Yeah, 6. Like they've all been fantastic, and like I mean actually fantastic, as in like they could all start for the Magic right now, and I don't know, maybe compete for a playoff spot or something. Like it has been unbelievable, and I just love the fact that they all have such random names. It's such a cool thing.
VanVleet, Siakam, Anunoby.
Oh my gosh! And also, I'm a really big Norman Powell fan, so hopefully he can show up in the playoffs. I'm so curious to see how Dwayne Casey treats the bench in the playoffs.
I think it's weird because you always hear about how they go to shorter rotations, but I feel like that would work against the Raptors because their starters can be so shaky. I feel like it might benefit him to have like a 12-man lineup instead of like a typical 9 or 10.
Yeah. So I guess we'll just go straight into the coaching matchup. I don't think this is going to be much of a competition for us. We have Dwayne Casey versus Scotty Brooks.
Yeah, Scotty Brooks lost all faith in 2012 when he just got killed by Spoelstra, who was also a baby.
Oh, so I was going to go the other way.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
You
because
don't
I'm
think Dwayne
really down
Casey?
on Dwayne Casey.
Are you really? Wow, I'm really shocked to hear you say that. I personally think Dwayne Casey has been a phenomenal coach this year. I know he's had some really, really bad, he's had some bad showings in recent years, but to me, this year, to me, he showed that he gave a changed approach, and rather than playing so much isolation through DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry, um, he really opened their ball movement and he allowed for much more 3-point shooting, and they kind of moved up. And they moved up on defense too. They're the only team entering the playoffs that's top five in offense and defense. It used to be them and Golden State, but Golden State's defense and offense both dropped, in recent weeks. So I don't think Scott Brooks really. I feel like to a degree he's also underachieved because I think John Wall and Bradley Beal they're probably the best backcourt in the Eastern Conference aside from Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, and they've consistently underachieved. He hasn't made the most of Otto Porter. His potential. He hasn't made the most of Kelly Oubre's potential, and obviously he had a lot of shortcomings when he coached the Thunder, and he was thoroughly outcoached in a lot of series back then. So I give the edge to Dwayne Casey just because I feel like he's had an amazing season, and it's he's even though I think Brad Stevens and Quinn Snyder are both better coaches than him this year. He's probably going to be up there in the Coach of the Year discussion, probably finishing second, or he may win it, which I don't think he should. He's going to be up there. So yeah, that's interesting. That's the first thing we've disagreed on so far.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think this is just really. I think the problem here is I don't have much knowledge on either of these guys. I personally I'm down on Dwayne Casey just because in recent playoff years I haven't liked at all what I've seen out of him in the playoffs. I think he coaches a lot like Doc Rivers, just
Oh
because.
yeah, that's a good comparison. You're right. He does. He really does.
Yeah.
He has before, but this season I've watched a lot of Raptors game in the regular season, so you haven't. So
Yeah, and like you think he's turned the corner?
Sorry?
And you think he's turned the corner?
I really think he has because I think it's weird this season he plays like I completely agree with your Doc Rivers comparison. Like that was so accurate actually. Like I wouldn't have even thought of that, but yeah, that's a great point. He really did before, but now I would equate him more to like a I guess like you know I'm not really sure who's a really good two-way coach in the league. That's I guess like Dave Yeager with a good team.
I can get behind that.
Like something like that. Like I think when you watch them in the playoffs, you'll really see, or who knows because the Raptors are so flaky. But if you were to watch a regular season game from them, I think you'd see some stuff that you really like. Their ball movement is so much more fluid. He plays his bench a lot of minutes now. He tries like rather than being so complex into specific isolation plays, he kind of runs like the same set of things to get like the same sort of results. Like he runs stuff for DeMar DeRozan to get to the basket, or he runs stuff for DeMar DeRozan to draw attention, then for Kyle Lowry to get a three, or for like OG Anunoby to get a dunk, or for Fred VanVleet to hit a corner three. He really gets a lot of guys involved now, which is I think why we've seen DeMar DeRozan's like he plays more openly now. Like that's why he shoots more threes now because Dwayne Casey's system has kind of changed a little bit. Kyle Lowry has been a good 3-point shooter this year, even better than in years past because of that. And they're more of a 3-point shooting team now, which I think that was an important thing for him to realize that the NBA was like, you can't run two really good isolation players and win. You have to shoot threes if you want to win. And they took a good step defensively. So I think their rankings, I think they're like top. I think they're number 3 in defense and like number 2 or 4 in offense. And they're probably not number 2 in offense. They're probably number 4 in offense.
Yeah.
So something like that. But yeah, they've impressed me this season. So I think hopefully you get to see that in the playoffs. But you never know with the baby dinosaurs.
Yeah, absolutely. And if Dwayne Casey can live up to that, then absolutely, I'm all on the Dwayne Casey train. Not for Coach of the Year because he has not done the best job, but yeah, absolutely
Brad
over
Stevens,
Scotty Brooks.
I think should win. Brad Stevens or Quinn Snyder.
Yeah, and yeah, okay. So if basically that's the case for almost all these positional matchups at this point is just can the Raptors live up to their potential? And yeah, so that's what I'm most excited to see. Well, what I'm most excited to see really is how the Raptors bench is used, but also are the Raptors actually going to live up to what they've been doing in the regular season? And also, is this series going to even determine that? Because I don't know about you, but I don't think the Wizards are even going to be competitive in this series.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think at maximum it's going to be 5 games just because DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry have an off game like they always do. But what I'm looking forward to most in the series, I really want DeMar DeRozan to step up and establish himself as like clear cut. I am the best damn player in this series. Like I want him to really. I'm not saying he has to go out there and average like 35 or something, but like I just want him to definitively play better than both John Wall and Bradley Beal and Kyle Lowry for that matter. Like I want him to just I want him to take over the series so that he feels confident going into the next round, so he doesn't choke.
Yeah, and just
Because
I've
because he's playing the Sixers in the next round, assuming the Sixers get out of the first round. We'll have to talk about that in a second, obviously. But assuming they play the Sixers in the second round, it's not going to be easy for them to beat them. And I think if you don't have a confident, like solid, zeroed in DeMar DeRozan, I don't think there's a chance that they would beat the Sixers personally. But we'll get to that when we get there.
Yeah, and I'll definitely talk about that point because that's something that I absolutely hate about a lot of the NBA playoff coverage, and wasn't something I've noticed before this year actually. So I don't know if they regressed or what, but yeah, just in terms of what the favorite needs to win in this series, it just not much because they're way better. Don't be a dumpster fire in terms of your performance, and yeah, that's really all I think. And then what the underdog needs to win, I'll quote this here: the Raptors need to take a massive step back from the regular season to lose, but I still don't see them losing even if that happens. So yeah, I have Raptors in four, clean sweep, not a competitive series, and yeah, Wizards are gone, and we move on.
Yep.
Okay, so our next series we have the 76ers Heat, and just to address that point from earlier about like just treating the NBA playoffs as too much of a bracket. I know this isn't something you do, but this is something I've been noticing over and over in like NBA coverage for leading up to the playoffs this year. So I just want to address it right now. I think it is a horrible tendency that these guys are doing this, especially this year of all years, when like there is like upset potential all over the place. They're treating it like it's the March Madness, and I really do think it's like a March Madness. I don't know what the word is, hangover, and like it just because with the March Madness bracket, it's a constant who you're gonna face. It's laid out from the beginning, and like whoever wins the game that's right next to you, you're playing them. In the NBA playoffs, the one seed, like obviously 1v8, 2v7, 3v6, 4v5, but in the next round, the top seed remaining plays the lowest seed remaining, and then the two middle seeds play. It is not 1v8 versus 4v5 in the next round. It's not 3v6 versus 2v7, like some people want to say. Obviously, if the favorites win, just they what's the word for it? They go chalk, I believe is how people describe it, just based on like actually writing out brackets. Then obviously that's going to happen, but that doesn't happen that often. Well, yes, that does happen a lot in the NBA playoffs because the NBA playoffs are very predictive and like you can say with like a ton of certainty that like something like I forget the exact percentage. I think it's like 80 or 85% of the time the favorite wins in the series. But and obviously like 4v5s being the exception to that because they're going to bring down that average. But yeah,
I agree. I agree with you. I think it's like because people get so caught up in the NBA as though like all this upset potential is possible, but like they're just like it's so definitive. There's been probably one in the past like I don't like 30 years probably. I don't want to say 30 years, but like since the 2000s, like I think the only time an 8 seed has beaten a 1 seed was when the We Believe Warriors beat the
well,
2007 Mavericks.
well, the only time that it really happened because obviously the Derrick Rose loss didn't really count.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't count the 2012 ACL tear. That was tragic. But like the only genuine one was that 6-game series where the Warriors upset the Mavericks in 2007. But like, and like there are just so many staggering statistics about the favored team. Like I think 80% of the time that a game 7 is on the home court, it's won by the home team. Like 80% of game 7s are won by the home team, and like obviously the teams with a 3-1 lead are like 11 and like I don't know like 200 something or whatever, and in the finals obviously like 1 and 132, not 132, and 32. Sorry.
Yeah, just something ridiculous like that. But like even still with that, especially in this playoffs, there's a lot of potential for upsets. I'm sure we're going to get into them soon. Obviously, it hasn't come up yet, but it seems like the NBA is starting its coverage off with the fairly predictable series, so we haven't really been able to touch on it. But yeah, if you have something like say in the East, the Celtics lose to the Bucks or something, which could easily happen. Then you have the Bucks facing the number one seed, which we're predicting to be the Raptors, and not the whoever wins the 4v5 matchup, and immediately that changes everything that people are talking about because like everyone's like, oh, the Cavs versus the Raptors, oh, what's gonna happen? What's that second round matchup gonna be like? That's in no way a sure thing. Like you can't look ahead like that in the NBA playoffs. That's absurd. And like everyone's doing that for some reason, and it drives me crazy because like it makes no sense. It's not realistic. First of all, because like I think the Bucks have a better chance of making it to the second round than the Celtics, and like it's just I just don't understand it really, and like it just annoys me.
Yeah.
I don't know. That might just be a me thing, but yeah, like I just wanted to point that out in case anyone else who's listening to this makes that mistake, because like it's an honest mistake. It is like a March Madness hangover. I think the finals were like 2 weeks ago, so like it's not like it's that far away from it, and like not everyone is as obsessed about just not playoff structuring, but like just bracket structuring. Like looks up Swiss style chess systems like me, or just like cares as much about systems. But yeah, like don't make the
Well,
mistake where you
but,
assume.
but I think let me just clarify correctly to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. Are you saying that if the like because you know that if the winner of the 1-8 series always plays the winner of the 4-5 series, right?
No, that doesn't happen.
No, that does happen.
Are you
I'm
sure?
reading I'm reading it right now. It says the 4 winners advance to the second round of conference semifinals with a matchup between the 1-8 and 4-5 winners and a matchup between the 2-7 and 3-6 winners.
Did I just make a complete fool of myself?
I think so. I hate to have to correct you,
Oh,
but yeah, the
well, I
winner of
appreciate you
1-8 always
correcting me.
plays 4-5. I didn't really understand because I wanted
No,
you
no
to finish.
kidding.
I wanted you to finish to make sure that like
Yeah.
I understood. But yeah, 1-8 always plays 4-5. So like the 1 seed can never play a seed lower than the 5th seed.
Okay. Well, let me change my point then.
Yeah.
It's BS that we have to have that system. We need a reseeding. If the 2 seed gets upset by the 7 seed, we need them facing the 1 seed. And
You're saying that you wanted
no,
reseeding.
that wasn't
So
what I'm saying at all. But it is now.
because this is what this says. Once the playoffs start, the bracket is fixed. Teams are never reseeded, unlike in the NFL and Major League Soccer, where
Yeah.
the strongest remaining teams face the weakest teams in subsequent rounds. The NBA is the only sport that doesn't do that.
Yeah. No, I was just completely wrong. But no, I actually do think that they should change that because you don't think that would be a smarter thing if like an upset like that would happen.
I think that would. I mean, I think that would be fine. I don't. I wouldn't have an issue with that at all because I feel like if you worked hard enough in the regular season to get the first seed, then you should have that sort of advantage.
Yeah.
Like to the lowest seed remaining, I feel like you've earned that right by having such a good regular season. So I would support that. But just for the sake of the podcast, I wanted to make sure that we were clear that that's.
Oh, absolutely. Like if I make that big of a mistake, I want to be called out on it. I don't want people just laughing at me
I
or
didn't mean to
whatever.
call you out. I just wanted to.
No, absolutely.
But anyways,
Yeah.
um,
So
well,
moving on to the next series, we got the 76ers Heat, which is going to be an awesome series. I think we're both really excited for this one. Really, the first good one in the. It's going to be the one that really carries us through Saturday. Because aside from that, we obviously have the Raptors, Wizards, and the Warriors, Spurs, and we're both predicting kind of blowouts in those series. So this one's going to be the exciting one, and it starts off with a great matchup at point guard, at least when Goran Dragic comes back. So we'll just assume that he's healthy, even though he's not for like game one.
so Goran Dragic and who?
Ben Simmons.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah, I had to clarify. Yeah.
So Dragic, I have Ben. I think it's clear Ben Simmons more versatile. Can't really shoot from the outside, but he can do everything else. Goran Dragic's only advantage over him would be his three-point shooting, which I don't think is going to be that much of a factor when you consider Ben Simmons' defense, passing, rebounding, and ability to score in the paint and in the lane for that matter. So I'm going to have to take Ben Simmons.
Yeah, I'm going to take Ben Simmons too. I like Goran Dragic as a player. I think he's a really good scorer. I'm not crazy about him on defense, and I don't think he's as good of a passer or a rebounder or a defender as Ben Simmons. I frankly don't even think he's as good of a scorer, but I think he's has more dimensions to his game. But just with how good Ben Simmons is at driving to the lane, I don't think it matters.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah.
So that's quick. We can move to shooting guard.
Yeah, and this one will be a little more interesting actually. We have J.J. Redick versus Josh Richardson, the new up and comer.
That's interesting because this is honestly at this point I'm gonna have to go with Josh Richardson because he's a two-way player. He plays good defense and he can shoot, whereas JJ Redick can just shoot. JJ Redick doesn't really add much to this team in terms of his defensive ability or his versatility. He's really just a spot up shooter to give Ben Simmons some space and someone to kick it to for threes. Whereas Josh Richardson is legitimately athletic and can actually take it to the rim and make plays at the rim. And he can make plays at the rim and from the perimeter because he can shoot the ball, and he does all that. He's younger, he can play more defense, he's more energetic. So even though JJ Redick does have more experience, I don't think he's ever. No, he has put in NBA Finals actually, but he has he has some experience, but I mean, in terms of what that'll come to on the court, I'm not really sure. I'm sure he'll be good for his team in the locker room, but I don't really think that he's gonna. It's not like I expect JJ Redick to step up in the clutch for this team or anything. So I'm gonna have to go with Josh Richardson.
Who do you play in the NBA Finals for?
The Magic, 2009.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Played
Oh,
against it was Dwight Howard, Jameer Nelson, JJ Redick, Tito Turkoglu, and one other and some other player. I can't remember, but it was basically Dwight Howard and four shooters, which is
yeah.
how they were so successful. They ended up beating LeBron James that year and were up to play going 5 games against the Lakers.
Yeah, I almost want to go back and watch that LeBron James series. Honestly, it must have been really interesting to see. And yeah, like I knew about Hito Turkoglu because he's just a fun guy to say, but a fun name to say. But yeah, no, apparently JJ Redick was on that team, and I don't think this one is a contest to be honest, because obviously we've talked about how JJ Redick has the Sammy Haynes problem. His arms are really short. Like he literally has a wingspan of 6 feet, and that would be okay if he was facing a shooting guard that like was similarly arm challenged. But Josh Richardson has a wingspan of 6'10", so you're literally talking about a 10-inch differential in terms of just being able to shoot the ball, like get the ball up, and like so that's massive. Even on like just moving around on the basketball court, it's going to be hard to get passes off against Josh Richardson. And honestly, I'm wondering if Brett Brown is just going to have to sit JJ Redick or bring him off the bench because
Yeah, you
it's
might
going to
have
be
to play Markel
ridiculous.
Fultz. You might even though Markel Fultz can't shoot, or actually, I'm not sure. I feel like they have someone on their bench that they could start.
Okay. Well,
Maybe they could start like Marco Bellinelli or something, just because he's bigger.
yeah. Well, even still, I don't think Bellinelli's as good as Josh
Yeah,
Richardson
he
for
do
the reason.
defensively,
Yeah, because like
but
defensively,
his
yeah,
arms
like
definitely aren't as short.
yeah, and like Josh Richardson, he has been a great defender for the Heat this year. Like he's really been anchoring them, and like he's one of the reasons that like this is one of the best defensive teams in the playoffs, even though nobody's giving him credit for that right now, just because there's better defensive teams. But like they are a really strong team defensively, and I'm fascinated to see how that gels with the 76ers. But we'll move on to a small forward where we have Robert Covington versus James Johnson.
Oh, this is interesting because they're kind of similar players, I feel like. But I'm going to give the edge to Robert Covington. I think he's a little bit younger. I think he's a little bit. I think he's a better defender. I think he's one of the reasons that Philadelphia is second best defensive team in basketball this season. So he can shoot the three. He can play really good defense. He's the ideal 3-and-D player. Whereas I think James Johnson is a little bit more of a contributor defensively. He's definitely a grinder, but I like Robert Covington. I like Robert Covington more in his role because I feel like Robert Covington's teammates, such as Joel Embiid passing out of the post, Ben Simmons giving it to him, from with good passes on the perimeter. I think Robert Covington's team will utilize him to the point that he'll be a better player in this series than James Johnson. So for that reason, I'll take Robert Covington.
Okay, and I'm going to be honest, for this one, I don't know either of these players well enough to say anything about them, so I'm just going to
I
go
know
off.
Robert Covington pretty well. He's pretty young too. He's like 25, 6, I think.
Oh, okay. And obviously, all the Heat players are young aside from Dwayne Wade and Udonis Haslem.
Udonis Haslem, the savior of Miami Heat.
Yeah, so I'm just going to take your word for that on the small forward, and we'll move on to the power forwards, where I know a little more about these guys. You got a power forward, Dario Saric and Kelly Olynyk.
I'm going to go with Dario Saric. I don't think Kelly Olynyk has ever made that stride to being the next Dirk Nowitzki, as many people called him, for being white, tall, and being able to shoot.
Wow,
So
I've never heard that one.
I have. I heard that one. I've heard that one a lot. A lot of people thought Kelly Olynyk would be like the next Dirk because he had like long blonde hair and was white and 7 feet tall and could shoot the three.
Wow.
But Kelly Olynyk has really never added anything else to his game. I think the only highlights of his career are breaking Kevin Love's shoulder.
I was about to say, yeah.
Yeah, he dislocated Kevin Love's shoulder a couple years ago, and he can shoot some threes. But I would have to go Saric. I think he's more fundamentally sound. I think he's more skilled. I think his team will utilize him better. I think he's better defensively, even though he's not a great defender. He seems to be a smart player, as a lot of foreign players are. So I'm going to give the edge to Dario.
Yeah, I agree. I think Kelly Olynyk is a subpar power forward in a league that is completely starved of power forwards. I don't think he's a good center either, so that's not really supporting him. And I'm not crazy about Dario Saric, to be honest. I think he's a good plug-and-play player, but maybe
he's
if
not a star or anything.
yeah, like maybe he obviously has potential because he's pretty young, but we'll see with him. He was like in the top four players on the 76ers, so we'll see what he can turn into.
Yeah, he would have been the rookie of the year last year too if it weren't for Brogdon and Embiid.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so then that would be a power forward. Then we can move on to center. For this, we'll just assume Joel Embiid's healthy because I think he's going to come back for game 2 or 3.
Yep, it's fun matchup. I like this one. Hassan and Whiteside and Joel Embiid.
Yes.
I love Joel Embiid as a player. He's probably going to be my favorite player once I'm loyal to the soil with Dirk Nowitzki. But after he retires, I think I'm going to shift over to having Joel Embiid as my favorite player.
Okay.
But I love Joel Embiid. I love the way that he can play in the post. I love that he's a great defender. If not for Rudy Gobert, I think he'd be the defensive player of the year.
Yeah.
He's really, really good. Even though he doesn't block as many shots as he did his rookie year, it's just he's always in the right spot. And I'll send you a clip when I get a chance. I just have to find it again. There's one clip of Joel Embiid, like he switches to like 4 different players and he just completely takes over a possession defensively, and he just completely alters it. It's insane.
Okay,
I love his ability defensively. I love the fact that he can shoot the 3. I love that he can play in the post. He's extremely skilled in the post. I remember last year people were putting side by side they're putting side by side videos of him and Hakeem Olajuwon doing the dream shake, and it was identical. He's so skilled. I think that he's just more talented than Hassan Whiteside. He's a better scorer. He's a better passer. Hassan Whiteside is definitely, he's a better shot blocker, but I don't think that makes him a better defender. I think Hassan Whiteside is a little bit better of a rebounder, but I'm going to give the advantage to Joel Embiid because he can do everything. I think he can do everything that Hassan can do and a little bit more. So I also don't think Hassan Whiteside he still doesn't really have any defined offensive skills. So
okay,
for those reasons, I'll take Embiid.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to make a case for why, if this was any other center, I would have to make a case for why Hassan Whiteside hasn't been living up to his potential this season. He's really regressed, and now he's just been underperforming overall. But frankly, it doesn't matter. Joel Embiid has been this good this season. Like he's been a top 5 center in the league. His defense has been awesome, as you said. His offense has been awesome as well. He's just been a fantastic passer. It's so much fun to see him shoot frees, just being 7 free and he's just sauntering up to the line and just bam, and then he shoots a free, and that's always fun to see. And seeing him even do the post up against other centers where he's 7 free, so he's got a whole 2 inches on most centers, some even more if it's someone like Taj Gibson. And yeah, it's just fascinating to watch him play, and I agree he's one of the most fun up and coming players in the league.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. I like him a lot. So moving to the bench then, right?
Yeah, so I'll just read off both teams' bench. So for the 76ers, I have Amir Johnson, the former Raptors guy. I never thought he would leave the team, to be honest. TJ McConnell, Marco Bellinelli, and then just as a nice little shout-out, Ersan Ilyasova, even though he sucks. Just had to give him a call out there. And then for the Heat, I have Tyler Johnson, Ben Adebayo, Justice Winslow, who has been underperforming this season, but he was a name I recognized, and Dwayne Wade.
Okay, this is going to be. I would give the slight edge to the Heat's bench.
Yeah.
Just because I know Dwayne Wade is he really steps it up in the playoffs. I remember 2 years ago in 2016 when people were just that was Dwayne. Dwayne Wade had an okay, that was his first real season of regression. It was, I think, the second year after LeBron left. And people were he only averaged, I think, 18 points a game. And people were it's he's old now. It's Dwayne Wade. And then, that was a really bad year for him shooting the 3. And then the playoffs came and he took them to 7 games against the Hornets. And even though they were a 3 seed, it was a pretty competitive series because I think they were only a couple games back of them. So people thought it would be a competitive series. It went to 7 games. Dwayne Wade completely took over that series, and he became extremely hot from the 3-point line. He was hitting all sorts of 3-point jump shots, and everyone was like, "Whoa, that's crazy!" Dwayne Wade can't shoot threes. And then in the second round against the Raptors, a lot of people believed that he was gonna beat the Raptors in that 7th game, but then the Raptors narrowly escaped that one. And I think they would have if I don't know if you remember this, but in 2016 in Game 1 with the Heat playing the Raptors. Kyle Lowry was able to tie that game and send it to overtime with he chucked the ball from half court and he tied the game and sent it to overtime. And then I think the Heat ended up losing Game 1. So if Kyle Lowry had missed that heave, I think there's a good chance that Dwayne Wade and the Heat would have won that series, played Cleveland in the conference finals, which would have been interesting. Because obviously, LeBron has struggles against Miami.
Yes.
So I'm going to give strictly because of Dwayne Wade, I'm going to give the edge to the Heat bench.
Yeah, for me, this just comes because I'm really not a fan of Amir Johnson. Didn't like him on the Raptors. Really didn't like him on the Celtics. So like I don't consider him a factor. Obviously, Ersan wasn't a factor. He was just fun.
Yeah, he had one or two. He's recent too. Him and Marco Bellinelli have been at it, I think, like 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
They had a couple good games, but Marco Bellinelli had like 2 really good games. He had like 25 one game and then like 30 another game. But
yeah, he's just a fun throw out. And like for me, T.J. McCollum, I think not T.J. McCollum, T.J. McConnell. I think he's been about as good as Tyler Johnson this season. Like McConnell's good, but Tyler Johnson is really good as well. And not a lot of people know about him because like not a lot of people know Heat players just because like they're kind of no names. But he's been really good off the bench. He's been doing a lot of six manning for them, so that's been good for them.
he's a good 3-point shooter, so
Yeah, and then I just feel like Dwayne Wade is a lot better than Marco Bellinelli off the bench, and then Adebayo is only a benefit for them.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to get into coaches, and this one should be taking them out to the slaughter, really. I don't think either of us are crazy about Brett Brown, but I know we both like Eric Spoelstra as a coach.
Yeah, I think it's definitely Spoelstra. He's done phenomenal. Like the fact last season he took a team that was 11-30 and got them to finish 41-41.
Incredible.
Just out of the playoffs. That was absurd. I even though he didn't make the playoffs, I was like, damn, he should get some Coach of the Year votes. Like,
yeah, me too.
But I love Spoelstra. I just think that he I've always thought he was a great coach. Like the fact that he was a baby coach when he was coaching LeBron, and he managed all of that. He managed having LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh on one team, took them to the finals 4 consecutive times, and then he missed the playoffs the first year LeBron left, but then he was able to bring them back the next year, and then even through Dwayne Wade's absence, he was able to push that team from going 11-30 to 41-41, like I said. And this year he's been able to kind of he got Dwayne Wade back now, and I just think that he's done a pretty good job getting them to a secure spot, in a comfortable position, because they really could have finished anywhere. They could have finished 6-2 if things had worked out a little bit differently. But I think there was a brief period where they were at 4th, but then they slipped a little bit. So I think it's Brett Brown is just kind of like. I feel like it's just kind of like he happened to be the coach when they started the process, and now it's like he should be the coach that's there for the process. I don't really give too much into him. Like I feel like he probably just I feel like he has good defensive schemes, but on offense, I truly feel like he just kind of lets them he's like, oh, Ben Simmons, just play point guard and give it to Joel, and you guys just take turns.
Yeah, just be creative.
Yeah, exactly. Like I really feel like he didn't really run anything offensively. So I think Brett Brown is a good defensive coach, but Spoelstra's amazing on both ends.
Yeah, same thing for me. And Eric Spoelstra, this isn't something we've ever talked about, but I actually think he has a good chance to break the NBA wins record for a head coach just because he got started so young. And for some reason in the NBA, that just doesn't happen that often, that coaches start when they're 37 or 38 years old.
Yeah. So you're saying, if he coaches for 30 years, and the Miami Heat are a good franchise. The thing is, though, what I might think, though, I feel like Pat Riley might be grooming Eric Spoelstra to take over as president of the team when Pat Riley steps down and is too old. So maybe he won't be a coach anymore. Maybe he'll step up to being a front office guy. But I hope, for the sake of his, because Pat Riley was a coach and then became the front office guy. But I hope Spoelstra stays in coaching because, with more consistency and with more good players, if he gets into the draft a couple of years and gets some good players, he could kind of be like the next Popovich. But
yeah, because it only takes 20. Yeah, and it only takes 25 years to break the wins record. So I mean, that's not crazy long.
42 maybe.
Yeah,
something like that. But
and obviously you got a great start with that Heat dynasty. So yeah.
Okay. He's already got 2 rings. So
yeah. So what do you think and this is not the first time this is actually going to be interesting, but what do you think the favorite, the 76ers, the 3 seed, needs to do to win this series?
Well, I think the Sixers just kind of need to not get, they need to not get complacent. They need to not think that their 16-game win streak means anything because they only beat 3 teams that had winning records, which is something that no one talks about when talking about the 16-game winning streak that they're on. They just need to not get overwhelmed with the fact that it's the playoffs. Their young players need to come and calm down and, not really give in to any of this playoff pressure or anything like that. And most importantly, they need to get Joel Embiid back for Game 2 or Game 3 at latest.
Yeah, I agree with that. But my big thing is don't let the young Heat players get hot, especially the guards and small forwards. Like
Like
if
you mean like Tyler Johnson and Jason or Josh Richardson and stuff.
yeah, and yeah, you said Tower Johnson, and like especially those two, and also let me see, good Dragic when he comes back, he can get hot, and obviously if you let Olynyk start making a budget freeze, you're just screwing up on defense. Like
Yep.
this is a
Yeah.
Heat team that can run you out of the building if they get super hot, and like as you would guess from their name, and yeah, like they play really good defense, just like the 76ers. I think that's personally, I think that's just gonna offset each other. So like it's just going to come down to who plays better offensively in the series. And yeah, like
Yeah.
if the 76ers get lax and the rookies and the sophomores from the Heat get hot, they could be in some trouble.
Yeah, I think what the Heat would need to do to win this series is just kind of slow the pace down so that the 76ers can't do all that, like, because they're a really good 3-point shooting team with, they have some, like, they've got Robert Covington, they've got Gigi Redick, they've got Dario Saric, they've got Joel Embiid, they've got Marco Bellinelli, they've got Ersan Ilyasova. Every single one of those players can shoot threes. So when you surround Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid with those two players, it's kind of, they're a really good 3-point shooting team. So I think what Miami needs to do is kind of slow the pace down and not and get them to play more in a half court thing, which I think they're capable of doing because, like you said, they can run you out of the gym. So I think as long as they're really fast getting buck on defense, have really good transition defense, don't allow that much in full court, and limit transition opportunities. And I think what'll be important for them is to just have Hassan. Like, you really need to have Hassan Whiteside in there for every minute that Joel Embiid is playing, because if Joel Embiid is guarding anybody else, he's just going to completely destroy them. Hassan Whiteside at least has some sort of chance of defending him because he's also big and is a good rim protector. So I think it's just going to be important for Spoelstra to outcoach Brett Brown, which I think he's
Yeah,
capable of doing for them to win the
should
series.
happen.
But ultimately, I'm probably going to go just because of sheer talent. I'm going to go with the Sixers in 6 games.
Okay. For me, my X factor is not Embiid. Sorry, he's obviously going to be good. Hassan Whiteside. If Hassan Whiteside can return to last season's form, not this regular season, the season before, where he was a really good rim protector and like he was getting all the blocks. If he can affect Joel Embiid and make it so like Ben Simmons is questioning to if he should pass into the post and let Embiid just do his thing, I think that would be huge for the Heat because right now they have to do something about that Ben Simmons to Joel Embiid connection. If that's not fixed at all, they're not winning this series. So like that's my big thing. If Sam Whiteside's good, the Heat have a good chance. If he's not, then it's going to be really hard to be competitive here. And my prediction, I have 76ers in 6 games or 7 games, depending on if that happens or not. I think the 76ers have more talent, as I said. And personally, I don't think that the like this is a big thing for like me and young players, but I don't think they can play consistently. I can imagine Tyler Johnson, Josh Richardson, and even like Goran Dragic, who I lump into it, even though he's like 30 years old. I think they can have like 1 or 2 good games, but I don't think they can play fantastic over the entire series. And as I said, the defense offsets itself, and I think Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are more consistent with how they play.
Yeah, and before we move on to the next playoff series, you mind if I take a bathroom break?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll talk about the just the playoffs and our expectations going in. So I was thinking about what we were gonna talk about in like actual games because like Aradh and I, our big thing is gonna be we're watching all of the NBA playoff games. Personally, I don't know how big of a deal it is to him that we're doing that, but for me, it's a huge thing because every year, for like the past 3 or 4 years, I've tried to do that, and every year I fail in the first round, and it's super embarrassing. The farthest I've ever gotten was 3 games left in the first round. Like I got to like this was last year, and I got to like the Jazz Clipper, the 7th game of the Jazz Clipper series, and I just got burnt out. And yeah, it was hard. Biggest thing's gonna be keeping pace with the games. Right now, I think I'm feeling okay about it for games 1 and 2. I'm just concerned what's gonna happen in game 3, 4, and 5, and because like I was really enjoying that Timberwolves Nuggets game, as I was saying, that was an awesome game. But like I don't think we did it service talking about it for only 20 minutes. That was a fantastic game, man. The Nuggets played their butts off and actually played competitive defense. So that was a big thing. But yeah, like the factors we're gonna be doing, we're gonna take notes for every game. Not like crazy notes, like not like me on Mob Psycho 100. You guys know me taking crazy notes on that. Did 11 pages of notes on it. Hopefully, it was worth it for that monologue that you got on it. If you have no clue what I'm talking about, go check out my episode with Andrew where we talked about reviewing anime. That was good. But Yeah, like the big things that we're going to be looking at are who had the best performance in each game, who had the surprise performance, because, like with a lot of these teams, and we were just talking about the Heat, like you can have a player who surprises. Maybe Justice Winslow goes off for like 20 points. Who knows? Best defensive, and that goes into a best defensive performance and best defensive play. And when I thought about that, like what I really had in my mind was when we were watching that Timberwolves Rockets game a couple of podcasts ago, and like we were watching Derrick Rose play, and like we were bashing Derrick Rose, especially me, because I was concerned that he was going to take too many minutes from Tyus Jones. But he played fantastic defense. And, like that wasn't something I expected at all. And we both really enjoy watching defense, so that's something that we definitely want to pay attention to. And then outside of that, I also have a category for best play, so like just best individual play. I imagine for most games it's going to be a dunk, but I don't know. Maybe we'll have like a Sam Whiteside block or something. Maybe a really cool assist like that one LeBron James had through like two players' legs. That'd be really cool. And yeah, that's really that. Uh, let's see what else. Personally, the series I'm looking forward to watching the most probably is that 76ers Heat series. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But also the Jazz Thunder series that we're going to be talking about later. Obviously, I am a big Rudy Gobert fan, as you all know, and I'm really curious to see how he matches up with Steven Adams, and also how he's able to lock Russell Westbrook out of the paint. I saw a really interesting statistic the other day that, and by the other day I mean today, that Russell Westbrook he drives to the paint on 35% of plays, just in every game. Like that's over the course of the season. When he's facing Rudy Gobert, he only drives 15% of the time. So obviously that's huge for a player like Russell Westbrook, where you don't really trust his perimeter shooting. So that's that. Let me.
I'm back.
Oh, cool. I was just about to go in through some of my other topics just to fill time. Okay.
All right.
So
we
yeah.
can go on.
Yes. Okay. So next series we have is the Trailblazers Pelicans. This one's going to be really fun, as most of the West series are outside of the ones involving the 1 and 2 seed. So I guess we'll just get straight into things. We have a matchup that shouldn't be too hard to pick, but has a really interesting player on both sides. We have Damian Lillard and Drew Holiday.
Are you bringing Rajon Rondo off the bench?
Yeah, I'm bringing him off the bench.
Okay. So, Damian Lillard, Drew Holiday is a better two-way player, but I just don't think that he can match all of what Damian Lillard does from a scoring, three-point shooting, and taking over the game in the in clutch situations, and also playmaking. I think they're about the same. Drew Holiday might be a little bit better, but I think Damian Lillard just plays with more shooters. And he has like a legitimate running mate who he can always just give it to get some buckets for him, CJ McCollum, whereas Drew Holiday would kind of have to rely on Anthony Davis in the post, which sometimes he chooses to pass it off, which sometimes can be sometimes will obviously not result in an assist. So I'll take Damian Lillard.
Yeah, I will as well. I like Drew Holiday a lot as a point guard. I think he always is one of those players that has a ton of potential and just never really turns the corner. This season, he kind of engaged on it a little bit, but that was mostly just Anthony Davis doing the legwork to get him as good of a seed as he did in the playoffs. Damian Lillard, obviously, you can't count on him for any defense. Can't really count on it for Drew Holiday either, so that's not really a factor. But offensively, he's a top 5 point guard. There's not much of a contest outside of that. Like, I mean, what you got Steph Curry, you got him, Kyrie if you want to, Chris Paul, and then yeah, really Damian Lillard. So that's obviously a huge factor. One of the best 3-point shooters in the league still, especially from super deep. So that's a big thing. Not as good as LeBron James apparently, but yeah.
54% from 28 feet and beyond.
Yeah, but obviously that's in a smaller sample size.
Yes, of course.
And so I have Damian Lillard as well. So we'll just get into the next one, which should be pretty obvious as well. Shooting guard, I have CJ McCollum versus our good buddy Eachwan Moore.
I'm gonna have to take CJ. Obviously, I think he's just
what?
Eachwan Moore. Yeah, he just. My cousin knows him actually.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
They went to Purdue together, but. Yeah, Eachwan Moore he has it. I mean, he can make corner threes, but I've seen him airball some critical shots. So I'm gonna have to take CJ. I really like CJ McCollum. He's obviously not much of a defender because he's very undersized, but I like his game. I feel like he could legitimately be a starting point. Like I feel like he could be like Damian Lillard light if he was on a different team, because he's a small guard who could probably play point guard because of his ball handling ability. Like he's literally just like Damian Lillard, except he can't shoot from as deep. So I would take CJ comfortably.
Yeah, like I wish he could develop more of a game in the paint. Like he could just become a better driving guard, because I think
Yeah,
that's something important for him. And like when I first saw him, I like saw his measurables. I'm like, oh, this is a small forward. But no, he doesn't play like a small forward at all. He plays like a point guard that can shoot occasionally, and yeah, really just takes up space. He's good at spacing, and like he's a decent defender. Would you say he's a better defender than McCollum?
each one more. I think I would say so.
Yeah.
But he's a little bit bigger, I think. So
Yeah, I like that, and that's my big thing with him. I think he has potentials just based on his measurables, but yeah, like he needs to do a lot of developing. And really, I think if the Pelicans were to start him at shooting guard in this series, it would just be to get him some experience because I don't think they really expect to go too far in the playoffs this year. Yeah, obviously, losing DeMarcus Cousins was a horrible blow to their chances, but yeah, like that's my thing with each one more. So obviously, CJ McCollum is much better, and can't wait to see that combination. That's going to be really interesting to see in the playoffs.
yeah, I like CJ a lot. I've seen him do some big things against the Warriors a couple times. There are only 3 players in NBA history who have scored 50 points in 3 quarters or less, and it's Klay Thompson, Damian Lillard, and CJ McCollum. So the fact that the Blazers have both of those guys is a huge advantage.
Yeah. So this next one's going to be interesting because it's the battle of the no names. You have Al Faruqi Aminu, famous for being the Clippers' really stand-in for whenever they could actually get a small forward, and then we have Darius Miller, who you might not believe is actually going to start, but I went through their roster. It looks like they don't have any better small forward.
They don't. I've seen Darius Miller quite a bit, much more than I would have liked to.
Yeah.
Better him than Solomon Hill, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding.
Darius Miller can shoot some threes, but I mean that's it. I don't really know whether or not he can play defense. I haven't watched enough Pelicans games, but I'll take Al Faruqi Aminu. Just I recognize him more. I understand that he's really hot and cold from the 3-point line. But all I've really seen him do is shoot threes. I don't know whether or not he's a good defender either.
He is. He's like famous for being a 3
I
and D.
figured he was.
Yeah.
So I'll take Al Faruqi Aminu just because I know that he's a 3 and D player, and he's quite big. I think for a small forward, from when I've watched him.
Yeah, like I originally thought he was a power forward, to be honest, but he's a small forward.
And my last name is Faruqi. His name is Al Faruq, so
yeah,
I'll go with.
That's a nice connection. And yeah, like I know absolutely nothing about Darius Miller. I'll take your word for it that he doesn't produce much because I don't know. I don't know.
So yeah, I think we're both Al Faruq on that one.
Yeah, not even an interesting name. But this next one's interesting because I'm serious. I'm serious. I'm curious to see where you go on this one because I might have a controversial pick. We have Ed Davis versus Nikola Mirotic.
Wow. Ed Davis. It's weird because they have such contrasting styles.
Yeah.
Ed Davis is strictly defensive and Nikola Mirotic is strictly offensive. But Nikola Mirotic just shaved his beard and he's done a really, really good job playing with Anthony Davis just because Anthony Davis plays more inside and he's a pretty good outside shooter, Nikola Mirotic. He can shoot it from pretty deep too. So while I would probably take Ed Davis in a one-on-one, like in terms of like who I would rather have, just in terms of their situations, I feel like Nikola Mirotic is more important to the Pelicans, and for that reason, I would take him. Also because I don't think Ed Davis has a game that you can really adapt that much to the modern NBA because he really doesn't shoot jumpers at all. He just kind of plays defense and scores sometimes at the rim. So I'll take Nikola Mirotic for the 3-point shooting factor and given how well he plays next to Anthony Davis because he's had some really big games. I think he put 30 points on the Warriors. So, he's shown that he can play even when another team's defense is pretty good. So I'll go with Nikola Mirotic.
Yeah, for me, I also go with Nikola Mirotic. It's close, but because I think Ed Davis is a fantastic defender on the Pelicans, and I think he's been one of the reasons their defense has held together as well as it has, along with Aminu and Nurkic, obviously. Like he's been the glue that's allowed their defense to be so team heavy because like they can switch Aminu and Ed Davis and Nurkic on any player on the court and they're fine, and that's been massive for them. They have great spacing.
It's a fun court. You're right.
Oh yeah, and like he's been awesome on defense. So there's that, but I agree with you. He has no offensive game, and the biggest thing that swings this one is Mirotic is an average defender. He's above average on offense. You can count on Mirotic to get some threes, get some great drives to the lane, do some beard salesmanship. And yeah, like he said,
Shaved it though.
oh yeah, I don't know what he's gonna do now. Maybe he can go like a fake beard or something.
Yeah, he looks a completely different guy.
Yeah, that's weird. Usually they do like the playoff beard.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh.
Center then is what, AD and Nurkic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anthony Davis. I mean, this is maybe a lot of people might not agree with this because I just think Anthony Davis has been one of the least fortunate players just in terms of injuries and the fact that he's been surrounded by complete and utter garbage for so long. Like
Oh yeah.
there have been multiple games where his second and third best players have literally been Solomon Hill and Darius Miller and Quincy Pondexter as the
Oh,
fourth option.
I forgot
Like,
about him. Yeah.
yeah,
Pondexter.
Drew Holiday has missed so much time. Boogie Torres, like he just has the worst luck in terms of his injuries and his teammates' injuries. Like he's literally his most reliable teammate has literally been Solomon Hill. And then you got like Alexis Ajinça and like just and Omer Ashik for the longest time. Like all these just god awful NBA players, like borderline NBA players. So I love AD. I think AD is. I truly believe that he is one of the only players in the league that's capable of being the best player on a championship team. I think it's like Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Kawhi Leonard, and like, maybe you can squeeze in like James Harden, given how we'll see this year, I guess. But Anthony Davis, I just think if you put him in any sort of if you put him in any sort of decent situation, like if you put Anthony Davis on the current Celtics with like Al Horford, Terry Rozier, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, I legitimately think that they could be a championship contender. And then with experience and time, obviously they'd be a championship favorite. But because I think Anthony Davis, because I was just thinking about this actually. Anthony Davis, I think he is a little bit better than DeMarcus Cousins because like I personally believe that if the roles had been reversed and Anthony Davis had tore his Achilles and been out for the remainder of the season, I don't think that DeMarcus Cousins would have been able to lead the Pelicans to the playoffs.
I agree.
I don't think that he has much of it. He doesn't have the defensive ability. He doesn't have the ability to carry a team on defense the same way. And while he is a little bit more skilled offensively in terms of the passes that he can make and is a little bit better of a 3-point shooter, I don't think that it's of that much of a difference to that he could carry the team to the playoffs. Anthony Davis is just more well-rounded in terms of offense and defense, whereas Boogie is all offense. So, and I mean, I like Yusuf Nurkic. I think he's a good defensive player, but I don't think he carries that much on offense other than playing around the rim. And he was recently body bagged by LeBron James on a monstrous dunk a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to have to go with Anthony Davis pretty easily.
Well, that's what happens to Nurkic. I think he leads the league in just getting smacked in the face or whatnot.
Yeah, he gets hit a lot. I've seen I have Carmelo Anthony hit him in the face. LeBron James hit him in the face. I think Enes Kanter hit him in the face. Like,
yeah, it's ridiculous. But yeah, obviously AD is a fantastic player. He's one of the best centers in the league, and that's with being one of the youngest as well. He's just a fantastic around the rim. He's fantastic on the perimeter. He's fantastic in the mid-range. He's fantastic on defense. There's not much he can't do, honestly. He's essentially carried this team to the playoffs. Honestly, I don't know how he's done it, to be honest. Obviously, of course, I haven't watched a single Pelican game, but I'm so fascinated to see how he does it in the playoffs because I just don't know how he does it with this team. It's an okay team, but it's not a playoff caliber team aside from Anthony Davis, and it's incredible.
Yeah, I think he was fortunate that DeMarcus Cousins got injured at a point in the year when they still had a lot of wins.
Yeah.
So that he had something to at least build off of, and they kind of had something to rally around. But I think Alvin Gentry has done a good job coaching. He's done a decent job. He's put his players in the right spots. He's put Drew Holiday in to maximize his ability. He's let Rajon Rondo maximize his ability because I know we just said that Drew Holiday would start a point guard, but I think the lineup they're actually running it. I think they're going Rajon Rondo, Drew Holiday, Darius Miller. Who'd you just say at their power forward?
Mirotic.
Nikola Mirotic and Anthony Davis. I think that's the 5-man lineup they're running. So, they've done a good job. I like the Pelicans a lot. However, obviously we'll get to the prediction in a minute after we get to the bench and coaching, but there's only so far I think they can go.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I almost feel bad for Nurkic that I have to say that he's the second best center in the series because he's had a fantastic year and he's been one of the biggest.
He has had an underrated year, I will say.
Yeah, I would not feel bad about saying that he's been a top 5 center this year. And I know there's a lot of competition with him there, but I
Yeah,
think
I think it would be probably what it'd be like. There'd be Embiid, or not in order. It would be Embiid, Davis, Karl Anthony Towns, and then
go
after those three,
we'll go
you know,
Bear.
they go Bear and then him. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and
Because I would have to exclude Boogie because I think
yeah,
he's missed a fair
and
amount.
Porzingis because of that too.
Yeah, but he tore his ACL as well. So
Yeah, which is I was saying in the same way as Cousins, but yeah, like it's incredible that he can even be that good considering that he was like a borderline bench player with the Nuggets just a year ago before he got traded. And
yeah, they did a good job maximizing his role. He really gave them some help.
yeah, like just in the past couple of years, there hasn't been a better example. Obviously, Oladipo, who we'll get to later, but there hasn't been a better example of a player getting traded to a team and just turning it to a whole new level. And I'd be really curious to like read an article, read like an interview with him or something. Just what really changed for him in Portland.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
that's
then
absolutely fascinating.
the bench now.
Yes. So honestly, I'm not crazy about this Trailblazers bench. I think all of these players suck on it, but I'm just going to read them out. So you have Mr. Overpaid Evan Turner.
Yep.
Then you have the I'm still in Yukon Shabazz Napier.
Yep.
Then you have Maurice Harkless. He might be okay, maybe.
And
And then you have Noah Vonleh, who you know,
the only one of those players I like is Mo Harkless.
yeah, me too. Okay.
And the Pelicans is what Rondo.
Emeka Okafor, Tony Allen, Omer Asik, and Ian Clark and Dante Cunningham.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to take the Pelicans bench just because I like Rondo. I mean, a lot of people don't like him, but I think he's still a fantastic playmaker. He had 25 assists pretty recently. That's the highest assist game in the NBA this season.
Yeah.
He plays really well in the pick and roll and giving the ball to Anthony Davis in good situations. They play really well together. They have good chemistry. And Anthony Davis really likes him. I think Anthony Davis looks to him for kind of like a locker room leadership because, Rajon Rondo is an extremely intelligent player and he has a lot of playoff experience. He only before it was cool. Rajon Rondo was extremely close to averaging a triple double in the 2009 playoffs. He averaged like 19. He averaged 17 points, 9.7 rebounds, and 9.9 assists. So he's a really good because I think he was probably the best triple double threat in the league prior to Westbrook obviously going crazy with it.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, he was fantastic at getting triple doubles. I think he's pretty. If you look onto the all-time list, I feel like he might be up there.
Oh wow.
But obviously now it's gone crazy because like LeBron had 13 last year and 17 this year, and
yeah, that's amazing that like it has just been going off the charts the past couple of years because there's no reason it should have.
Yeah, it really just kind of came. I feel like it just kind of came off of like 1 second, Ryan.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, just on the point, like you can't say like it's pace of game or anything because obviously Oscar Robertson played in the season when like it was like 20 points per game faster than like not 20 points per game, like 20 points per 100 percentage per 100 possession more than it was today. So like you would expect more stats then than today. So like it's fascinating that we've been getting so many triple doubles, and like it's not like. Really, I just don't know why it's happening, honestly. I'll take it because it's awesome.
Yeah, it is a pretty cool thing that's been going on. But I like I like Rondo, so as a result of me liking Rondo, and I like Ian Clark's ability too. He can really shoot threes, create some things for that team, and he plays pretty well with Anthony Davis as well. So given the fact that, the Portland's best bench player is probably Evan Turner, I'm going to have to go with the Pelicans bench pretty easily.
Yeah, and that's saying something if your best bench player is Evan Turner. Like, he is not good.
And he's getting paid $70 million. That's absurd.
Yeah. And I'm actually really curious to see if Tony Allen has been keeping up the defensive play, because really, I don't know, because he got traded, obviously.
He's gotten old now.
Yeah, that was my concern. Okay. And then this is going to be an easy one. We have the coach battle, which is Terry Stotts versus Alvin Gentry. Gee, I wonder who's going to win this one.
Terry Stotts. There's no reason to. Terry Stotts is fantastic. He's better running schemes. He's better with everything.
Yeah. I mean,
working with less. So yeah.
I mean, there's not much to say here. It's yeah. Okay.
As a result, I think for the series. Honestly, it's close. In my mind, it's kind of close because of Anthony Davis. But if I'm being honest, I don't think Anthony Davis has enough help as you need in the playoffs to kind of win a series.
Yeah.
So
Like who on like Anthony Davis's team do you think needs to like shoot the lights out to really get him over the hump here?
Ian Clark and Etwan Moore are going to need to play the series of their lives, but I don't think that's coming.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with Blazers in 6 because they have 2 stars as opposed to having one. It's a guard-oriented league now, and Terry Stotts is a much better coach. I think he's going to, even though he has, I guess, less in terms of depth, I think he's probably going to utilize it to the best of their ability, especially because you cut your lineups a lot shorter, in the playoffs. So the Pelicans aren't going to be able to, they're going to have to make some decisions. They're probably not going to be able to play both Etwan Moore and Ian Clark. They're probably going to have to play one of them.
Yeah.
They're probably going to have to play Rajon Rondo, Drew Holiday, neither of which are fantastic shooters. And then Anthony Davis is in your lineup. He's not a great shooter either. So you have 3 players in your starting lineup who aren't going to be great shooters. And then I guess Nikola Mirotic is going to be your main source of threes. And, even though he's a good shooter, I think he probably only makes maybe 2 or 3 a game. So I would go Blazers in 6. As Damian Lillard once famously said.
Was that in a rap or?
No, he said it last year when they asked him what he thought about him playing the Warriors in the first round. He said Blazers in 6.
Oh, okay. Well, that
and
obviously.
Then they swept. So.
Yeah, that obviously didn't work for him. So, like, for me, yeah, I don't see this one as being too competitive. I think that the games will be, but I don't think the series will overall. I think that all the Pelicans need, not the Pelicans, I think all that the Trailblazers need to do to win is just get competent defense out of Ed Davis and Al Faruqi and shut down everyone not named Anthony Davis, because, it's kind of the LeBron James thing before LeBron James had good teammates. You can let him go for, 30 points a game, but as long as nobody else is scoring, you're going to win every game.
Exactly.
So, that's my thing for Anthony Davis. Yeah, just everyone around him needs to have an awesome series. Most excited to see the Trailblazers team defense because I'm just curious to see how it works, especially the forwards and centers because I just love their front court. I want the Pelicans to win just because I want the Pelicans to make a conference finals because I feel bad for them. And it's not going to happen, though, because I have Trailblazers in 6.
Yep. And, so that would move us to what then? Is that the Rockets, Timberwolves after that?
No, we have Celtics, Bucks because that comes earlier on Sunday.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, and this one's going to be interesting to talk about because I know I'm pretty opinionated on it, and I mean you probably are too.
Yeah, I think I'm not really sure whether or not you agree with my opinion, but we can go through the matchups first and foremost.
Yeah, so let's start with the very beleaguered point guard position ever since Kyrie Irving's gone out. I have Terry Rozier versus Eric Bledsoe.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Eric Bledsoe. He's shown me more in the past. He's overall a better player. He's more versatile. He's a really good defender. And Terry Rozier is still young, so I don't think there's much to expect from him because even though he's a pretty good offensive player, I don't think he's given much defensively, individually at least, because obviously the team's defense is really good. So I'll go Eric Bledsoe.
Yeah, I will as well. I don't think Terry Rozier. Yeah, I mean Terry Rozier is better than his backup. His backup is way worse. I don't remember his name to be honest, but
Shane Larkin.
Yes, Shane Larkin is a dumpster fire. So hopefully,
he's quite helpful.
So don't take him out of the game. But it's still clearly Eric Bledsoe. Okay, so then we have a shooting guard. For this one, I wasn't really sure who they were going to put there for the Celtics, so I just put Jaylen Brown because he sometimes lines up there. And then I had Chris Middleton for the Bucks.
I'm going to go Chris Middleton. I just think that he's more of a two-way player. I think he's more developed at this point. He's an amazing defender. He's a very underrated player, great shooter. Jaylen Brown still needs to come around in terms of a shooter and a scorer, but he is a good defender. And also, it's more of an experience thing as well. I feel like Chris Middleton he's played in the playoffs a couple times, and he's more ready for something like this than Jaylen Brown would be. So, Jaylen Brown, unfortunately, I'm going to have to rank below Chris Middleton in this situation, but it's not that far. It's close, but comfortably Chris Middleton.
Yeah, I agree. I just like Chris Middleton shooting better, and Jaylen Brown has gotten so much better from me, where he has been in the past couple of years, but it's still just not enough to beat Chris Middleton, because when Chris Middleton's healthy, he's a huge asset to this team.
He really is. Honestly, I was one of the people, I was really rooting for the Cavs to try and get him, but I'm sure the Bucks, because he's so long, he's such a good defender. I feel like he would thrive playing next to LeBron James.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point.
I really wanted them to try and make a move for him to see if he was available. Maybe offer I don't know. Retrospect, maybe they could have tried and get maybe do a Kyrie deal and get Chris Middleton and a couple people, but that would have been too scary of a duo in the East with Kyrie Irving and Giannis Antetokounmpo. So.
Yeah, and I doubt that the Bucks would have been willing to trade away Chris Middleton. But yeah, if you get Kyrie Irving, that's it,
Yeah, that's just a hypothetical. But
yeah.
small forward then would be what? Jason Tatum and Giannis?
Yeah. So this one's easy.
Yeah, I'm going to go Giannis pretty easily. Jason Tatum, I feel like as a result of how good the Celtics have been, Jason Tatum's had a little bit of an overrated rookie season. Sorry, Celtics fans, but he's really, he's really good. But 14 points per game, 5 rebounds, and like under 2 assists. And his shooting numbers are skewed because he really doesn't take that many attempts. And he shot it really well for a good stretch, and then he really stopped making them. So I doubt he even makes more than 2 a game. So I don't think his sample size is not very big, which is why shooting percentages are so good. And he really hit a wall around like January or in like after they played like the college season, he really hit a wall. So I'm not going to be depending on him or thinking too much of him come the playoffs. So I'm going to have to go Giannis fairly easily. And I don't think I have to explain that Giannis is he's a top talent in the league. So
I agree. Like under the not the whatever. What am I saying? Under the radar a little bit. Giannis has been having an MVP caliber season. Like he's been. This is the best season of his career. Not a lot of people are aware of that just because of how horrible his defense was because of the scheme earlier on in the year. But offensively, he's got the most assists that he's ever had, the most rebounds, the most points. And like it's incredible how much his points just go up every single year.
Honestly, he could be a candidate for most improved player again.
Yeah, which would be absurd.
He went from 22, 8, and I think 3 to now he's 28, 10, and 5, maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. The defensive stuff this year was weird because they had Jason Kidd, they fired him, they had Joe Truckty or whatever. So, they had some turmoil this year. If they had finished with a higher seed, they'd probably be more in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, most improved player is going to go to Oladipo, so we can't even hope for that. But yeah, it's obviously Giannis. Tatum, I think he's been really good this season. He's great offensively. I don't know too much about him defensively, but just on the fact that the Celtics have been a good defensive team, I'll assume he's done well. Honestly,
he's probably the second best defensive rookie this year after Josh Jackson.
Oh, okay. And just honestly, I expected him to be a bust coming out of college.
Oh, did you really? Wow.
Yeah, I never have a good reason for picking those. I most of the time I just ignore who they the rookies are because almost like 5 games into the rookie career, like okay, are they going to be a bust or not? So usually there's no reason to predict, but yeah, that was just my thought for some reason, and yeah, obviously Giannis in this one, but the next position is going to be incredibly close, and it's both players we absolutely love them. We have power forward Marcus Morris versus Thon Maker.
Oh, just because Thon Maker hasn't shown me much this season, I'm going to have to go with Marcus Morris.
Yeah.
He's come really big for the Celtics in some situations this year. He hit a off-balance fadeaway 3 to win a game, and he's really stepped up in the absence of all of his teammates. And Thon Maker kind of hasn't really made any significant strides, so I'm going to have to go with Marcus Morris pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I will too. I wish Thon Maker was better.
Because he's so long. He's huge.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm curious if he's actually 20 years old or not.
Oh, he's like Serge Ibaka. He lied too.
Yeah, well, we don't know, but yeah, he probably did.
My superstition tells me they lied.
Yeah, mine too, unfortunately. I've never heard the thing about Serge Ibaka. It makes sense completely because, Congo, but I definitely heard about Thon Maker, and, it makes sense just because of how huge he is.
Yep, and then center would be Al Horford and
John Henson.
John Henson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to go with Al Horford.
Really?
I don't think John Henson is I think John Henson is an underperformer. I don't think he's that much on offense. I think he's pretty good defensively. He anchors them pretty well, but I just think Al Horford will provide more veteran leadership. He has a lot of playoff experience, getting pounded by LeBron year after year. He's made the playoffs, I think, every year of his career, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he played with the Hawks. He was drafted by the Hawks in 2007, and they were pretty good all of the 2000s. And then, then he came to the Celtics. So he's got a lot of playoff experience. He's been on a 60-win team. He was an all-star this year. He's not, he's kind of declined since he's been on the Celtics, but he's still a pretty good defender. I think there was a time during the year he had he was averaging 2 blocks a game. He's not necessarily a good individual defender, but he's kind of like a mini Draymond Green. He's really good at orchestrating the defense and making sure everyone's in the right spots. and he's a really, really good passing center. He's obviously after we were talking about Jokic earlier, but Al Horford is probably like in the top 5 passing centers. And, he's still, a good rebounder, and then he has a couple points. So I'm going to have to go with Al Horford just because of his overall production and his experience over John Henson, who I don't think has much at all.
Yeah, but the only thing John Henson has is an amazing wingspan that he can't use at all. Like,
the whole team is so long that he doesn't really get to capitalize when he gets an individual defensive matchup, because by the time someone gets to John Henson, like Giannis or Thon Maker or someone will have disrupted the shot already.
Yeah, like for me, I've been raving about Al Horford for most of the season. I think that he's had an awesome year at center. He's been one of the best pick and roll players in the league, even though not a lot of people talk about that. One of the best screeners as well. Losing Kyrie Irving really hurts his game, so I'm curious to see how he can hold up from that. But even still, Horford is a great player. He's been having great 3-point shooting throughout the season, and yeah, he's just better than John Henson.
Honestly, Al Horford probably could be maybe he could step up, because when I think back to those Hawks teams, I would argue that he was probably their best player. It was close between him and Paul Millsap, but there were obviously times where Al Horford was a little bit better. So,
yeah, close enough that you can actually talk about it.
Best player, legitimately.
Yeah,
he's the second All-Star, so in theory he should be. But
I can go along with that.
We'll see.
Okay.
The matchups for this series kind of don't really. It's weird because the matchups for this series, when we talk them out, they don't really seem like they would be that much of a factor. But because it's not. It's there's coaching, the injuries, the way the teams are playing, and all that stuff. So the bench, I guess you can get into the bench players that you know.
Yeah, so for the Celtics, I have Daniel Feast, Aaron Baines, Greg Monroe, Marcus Smart, and Shane Larkin. I honestly shouldn't even have mentioned Shane Larkin. He's so bad. And then for the Bucks, I actually think this is the best bench in the entire league right now. I think you can make a case over the Raptors, but you can. Here, I'll say this: top to bottom, the bench of the Raptors is better. But I think when the rosters are shortened, this bench is better. So we have Malcolm Brogdon, Tony Snell, Tyler Zeller, Jabari Parker, Jason Tatum, Jason Terry. One of my favorite players, Shabazz Muhammad, Matthew Dellavedova, Mirza Teletovic. So what do you think?
I'm going to have to go with the Bucks bench pretty easily. I don't think that the Celtics bench. Also, just a slight thing, Daniel Tice is he tore his ACL. He's gone for the year.
Dang it.
That shortens them. So but he wasn't. He was a good rotational player, but he wasn't that much.
Yeah.
But the Bucks, far and away the Bucks bench. They have 3-point shooting with Jason Terry. They have versatility with Malcolm Brogdon. They have basically a star sitting on their bench in Jabari Parker. They might end up starting him over Thon Maker because of Thon Maker's lack of production.
Yeah.
Jabari Parker obviously has been plagued with injuries. If he hadn't been being amazing, he'd be a star probably in this league. He has a lot of potential. He shows a lot when he plays. Him and Giannis coming together this season to make some noise would actually be brilliant. But their bench is a lot better. Jason Terry, Malcolm Brogdon. Mirza Teletovic, a few years ago, prior to this season, I think he set the record for the most 3-pointers off the bench in one season. So he's a good asset. Matthew Dellavedova, obviously an amazing defender. I haven't seen much of him lately. And then I feel like you said one more player, but I think I'm missing.
Shabazz Muhammad? Or Jason Terry? Jason Terry? Zeller?
Tyler Zeller, yeah, he's a pretty good stand-in defender too. He's, obviously there's so many. I think him and his brother Cody Zeller, but Tyler Zeller is, he can stand in and give you some good defense as well. So he'll probably won't make the final cut for the rosters. It'll probably be the starting five. It'll probably be, I think, Malcolm Brogdon, Jason Terry, Giannis Antetokounmpo, John Henson, Shabazz Muhammad, Eric Bledsoe, Chris Middleton, and then Jabari Parker. That'll probably be who it ends up being. So.
Yeah, and obviously I'm really on the Bucks bench, but I'm curious to see what you thought of my suggestion earlier that this Bucks bench in the playoffs might actually be better than the Raptors. What do you think about that?
It might. I kind of agree with that because they have more experience. Malcolm Brogdon is a rookie of the year. Jason Terry is he's super veteran. He's still a great 3-point shooter. Then you have players who you have Jabari Parker who's been in the league a long time, whereas the Raptors bench is extremely young. I think Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet are both super young, and then OG Anunoby's a rookie. like you can't really depend on rookies that much in the playoffs. It's just really historically not that great of a thing, other than Magic Johnson, of course. So yeah, I think you're right. In the playoffs, you might be onto something that the Bucks bench could be the best, just because the Bucks are kind of. It's weird because they were seated low, kind of like it's like coaching turmoil and stuff is kind of what prevented them from winning 50 games. It's like they just had a bunch of weird stuff happen, kind of like they had imbalance and stuff. So I mean, they won less games than they should have, but I don't really think I don't think that's an indictment of their players necessarily. So
Yeah, and like really, I think it's just the people that can come off the bench first. I think they're better than the Raptors. I'm a big fan of Tony Snell. I think he's one of the best free and T players in the league.
Oh, yeah, Tony Snell. Yeah, I was missing him. Yeah, he is a good player. I remember when he got traded from the Bulls. That was interesting.
Yeah, I didn't think that was a good trade either, but I mean they were in rebuilding mode, so you just get rid of everybody, I guess.
Yeah, but yeah, Bucks bench. I would say fairly easily. I mean and then like there are just other players on the Celtics like that we didn't even mention. Like there's a Gershon Yabusele and there's there's like Semi Ojeleye and there's just Aaron Baines. We didn't talk about him. I think you said his name though.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think just all around the Bucks roster is just much more complete, and they have a legitimate superstar in this series.
Yeah, that's pretty much how we feel about that team. Then we have the coaches, which is like pretty much the biggest difference in terms of ability that we see overall. We have Brad Stevens versus Joe Prunty.
Yeah, I'm good. Brad Stevens. We don't even need to discuss this. Brad Stevens is going to be the coach of the year. He won 55 games with literally Kyrie Irving and just a fantastically coached defense and nothing else.
Yeah, like how would you describe Prunty's style? Because I know nothing about it.
It's weird. It's like kind of slow paced, but at the same time trying to be like other modern teams. It's like he tries to slow the pace down, but doesn't really do it effectively. But like I think they've definitely been worse with him. So they just seem a little bit confused. It's kind of like we all play through Giannis, and then we give Jabari a lot of minutes to try and see if he has any real star power. Hopefully, because I've never heard of him in the coaching world. Like I don't know if he's like an assistant from somewhere, or if he's I don't know if he's just new. So
I mean, obviously interim. So like he just came in for Jason Kidd as an assistant.
Jason Kidd, but yeah, I mean Joe Prunty is. I don't think he's a very good coach.
Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna get mid-season? But yeah, like, did you think that was a good decision to fire Jason Kidd? Like, obviously the defense was just completely failing, but like, was it?
I really don't think it was because I feel like Giannis has been much less engaged ever since they fired Jason Kidd because he had such a strong connection with him. Like he really loved him, so like I just feel like Giannis kind of fell out of all discussions once Jason Kidd was fired because they took a real downhill after all that happened. So
yeah, okay, that makes sense. Here, let me go through some of the things that I think that each team needs to do. So for me, the Celtics. Here's what I said. Let me just quote this. This one's gonna be tight, folks. Brad Stevens needs to coach his ass off on this one, and he needs otherworldly production from Morris, Tatum, and Brown if they want any chance of surviving this one. And then for the Bucks, I had play to their potential. The Bucks should be able to win this, mainly on their bench and Giannis tearing them up. But the Bucks have underperformed in the playoffs, which not a lot of people talk about. So let's cross our fingers.
Yeah. Given all that I've said, this opinion might surprise you, but I've got Boston in 6.
Oh, okay. Huh. Hey, why do you have that?
See, because like I just don't think that Giannis has I just don't think that he has any dependability around him because, like I said, Eric Bledsoe is an experienced player, but I don't think he's ever played in the play. Or maybe he did when he was on the Clippers, but he hasn't been in the playoffs in a while. I don't think that he's not really big in the most pressure packed situations. And I just think Giannis is because Brad Stevens is such an amazing defensive coach. I just think he's going to exploit the hell out of the fact that Giannis can't shoot threes because, like, I know in most matchups it doesn't matter because Giannis can just push past them, but like. Jason Tatum is a good rookie defender. Jaylen Brown is a good young defender. Marcus Morris is a good defender. And then you've got Al Horford in the paint. And then Aaron Baines, when he's in the game, is a really good – he's a difference maker defensively. He's not really much offensively at all, but he's he's kind of like Andrew Bogut. He'd be not the shot blocker of Andrew Bogut, but, the defensive positioning and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to have to go with the Bucks just because I have a ton of faith in Brad Stevens. I think that he really gets the most out of like just these random players. Like the fact that they were able to they had convincing wins over the Raptors and like a lot of other good teams, even with all of their stars hurt. So I just think that he's going to be able to get them. I think what's going to be proven in this series is that Brad Stevens is actually the most valuable asset to the Celtics, and that it really has nothing to do with Kyrie Irving having some phenomenal season that led them to having this many wins. I really don't think it had anything to do with Kyrie Irving. I think that you could plug in any sort of scoring point guard just to give them an offensive spark, and that you could have them win a lot of games just because of Brad Stevens. His system is just so fantastic because like he really adopts the right mentality, which is like, your offense comes and wanes, so it's not really a good point to have a great offensive because your defense will be there every night because you can always play defense, but your shots won't always go in. And I just think the Bucks' inconsistency with Joe Prunty will come to haunt them, and I don't think that they'll be able to put it together to win 4 games against a 55-win Celtics team, which they really won't only have like Kyrie Irving and Marcus Smart are the only 2 real pieces that they're missing, and you won't really need Marcus Smart that much in this series because Marcus Smart is typically used to chase like really good point guards like Kyrie Irving when he was on the Cavs and Kyle Lowry or DeMar DeRozan, and having it's just going to be Eric Bledsoe who's like 6'1", so Terry Rozier I think is like 6'3" or 6'4", so he can do a pretty good job defending him because he is pretty long. So I don't think Marcus Morris's presence is going to be felt. His absence isn't going to be felt in this series because his absence is never felt offensively because he's one of the worst offensive players in the league.
Yeah.
I think his career field goal percentage is one of the worst in history. I think his
No,
career
you're
field
right.
goal percentage is like 35, 36 or something like that. He's pretty awful offensively. And then Kyrie Irving, I mean, obviously they'll miss his offensive production, but when you get Terry Rozier plugged in, and then you give Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown more of an opportunity, I think I would go with. I'm not going to pick the Celtics comfortably. Like I could definitely see the Bucks winning, and I won't be surprised if they do. I just think that Brad Stevens will be able to get the most out of his team for at least a 6-game series. It might go 7. If it goes 7, then maybe the Bucks will win. But I'll take Boston because their home court advantage is really good. They win a lot of games at home, even with their stars out. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with the Celtics just because of Brad Stevens and all the rookies, all the team's defensive ability as a whole. I think they're a little bit. They're not as gritty as the old Grizzlies and all that, but they're similar in the way that they really anchor and win games through their defense alone.
Yeah. You know what? I think you might have convinced me, to be honest. Like this entire time, I've been saying, I don't know if I conveyed it at all, but I don't trust the Bucks in the playoffs. Like I think that a lot.
Shaky.
Yeah, like I don't think a lot of people recognize it. Like everyone talks about the Raptors underperforming in the playoffs. Everyone talks about can't really think of another example, but I'm sure there's another team that underperforms in the playoffs. But the Bucks definitely do. And that Bulls series, they should have won that series. That was not
I think they should have beaten the Raptors last year too. Honestly.
I agree. Yeah, like the Raptors fumbled that series completely. Like they should have.
Yeah, it's like they didn't even want to win it. Honestly.
Yeah, but no, like the Bucks have a history of this, and I don't think they're gonna get past it. If the Bucks come in game 1 and they look like, frankly, better than the regular season form, and like that's my other concern. Like the Bucks haven't been even living up to their potential in the regular season. But if the Bucks play to their true talent, then I think that they can win the series. So it's going to come down to game 1. If that happens, I have Bucks in 7. If that doesn't happen, I don't want to see it happen. But yeah, the Celtics will probably win, and Brad Stevens will get the win that he deserves because he's a fantastic coach. And I couldn't agree more with that Kyrie Irving point. Like seriously, I don't know why people talk about Kyrie Irving as if he's some fantastic point guard. Like he's good, don't get me wrong, but he's barely an All NBA player to start out with. And then some people were like, "Oh, he's better than LeBron James." I'm like, "Shut up! What are you talking about?"
No, like the fact that Isaiah Thomas is 5'9" and has never averaged more than 15 points and 5 assists away from Brad Stevens, but he averaged 29 and 6 with Brad Stevens.
Yep.
Should tell you everything you need to know about Brad Stevens and point guards to play for him. Terry Rozier is getting Michael Jordan comparisons playing under Brad Stevens. It's almost like
What?
a D'Antoni thing.
I have not heard that hot take.
Oh yeah, it's just I think I mentioned it one time. It's because their jump shot and free throw look so similar, and he's been taking a lot of clutch shots and making them recently. People have started to call him Scary Terry and put his picture with Michael Jordan. So
okay, well that's a hot take and a half. Okay,
yeah.
But yeah, obviously I really want the Bucks to win this one, but yeah, now you've scared me. So yeah. Okay. So after that, we have the Cavs Pacers matchup, and that's it'll really just come down to if the Cavs can flip the script or not. So I guess we'll give them the Pacers their due diligence.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. So point guard would be what? Corey Joseph and George Hill.
Oh, are they start? Dang, well, I was completely wrong. I had Calderon and Collison.
Oh no, you're right. I think you're right about Darren Collison, but they are starting George Hill.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just change
Yeah,
that.
no, you're right. Darren Collison and Oladipo, that is their starting backcourt. You're right.
All right.
I'll take Darren Collison over George Hill. I think George Hill has underperformed since being on Cleveland. I don't think he's really lived up to anything offensively or defensively, for that matter. He hasn't been as good a defensive player recently. So, yeah, I'm going to give it to Darren Collison just because he's been a really good three-point shooter this year, and he's been a really good playmaker. I think he's averaging close to like 6 assists maybe. So, I'll give it to Darren Collison.
Yeah, I think a really good 3-point shooter is an understatement. Isn't he like leading the league in 3-point shooting?
Collison?
Yeah.
I think he is.
Yeah, I think he's literally at like 47%, which is absurd.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so like he's been the best outlet in the entire league, and like I talk about how Jingle Joe has been amazing for the Jazz and just being able to throw 3-pointers over there whenever they need them. But Collison, ooh, hey, he is a great option for Oladipo if he ever wants to kick it out, which they definitely do because they're always driving to the mid-range game.
They're
But
a great backcourt. They're a really underrated backcourt. They complement each other very well.
really underrated front court too. But yeah, like George Hill, he has underperformed a ton ever since he's left the Sacramento Kings. Like his 3-point shooting's gone down. His defense hasn't been what the Cavs have needed or expected. And obviously, maybe he'll turn it on in the playoffs. But we'll see. And yeah, it's pretty clearly Collison. And I didn't realize he was as good of a playmaker as you're saying. So good for him.
I think I might be wrong about that. I might be thinking of somebody else, but I think he's pretty good.
Yeah, I'll check the stats, but in the meantime, we have a shooting guard, and this one's kind of interesting, but not really because Oladipo's amazing. We have Oladipo versus Kyle Korver.
Yeah. I mean, regardless of who the Cavaliers choose to start at shooting guard, I'm not sure if it's J.R. Smith or if it's Kyle Korver, if it's Rodney Hood. Whoever it is, all those players are one-dimensional. Rodney Hood still hasn't established himself as a two-way player like I would like him to, whereas Oladipo led the league in steals this season, 2.4 steals per game, which is pretty high. Because usually like the league leader is like 2 or 2.1, but 2.4. So he did a really good job this year. He averaged 24 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds. Oladipo really came out this season. He really showed that his draft position was worth it, I feel like. And it's weird because it's 2018 and he was drafted in 2013, and we're just realizing that he's actually really good. He's shot the three amazingly well, which I didn't think that was a part of his game. He's super athletic. So Oladipo easily over, regardless of anyone who Cleveland could play at the shooting guard position is worse, unless of course you play LeBron at the shooting guard. And it's Oladipo is far. I think Oladipo is legit. I think he's like, you could argue. I think that he's the second best player in the series after LeBron and then Kevin Love. And then the debate would be between Kevin Love and Oladipo just because Kevin Love can be inconsistent sometimes, whereas Oladipo's been really good this season.
Yeah, I'd give it to Oladipo just between those two because I was reading something the other day and I forget if I mentioned this or not, but with Oladipo's number of win shares this season, apparently, literally in NBA history, any player who has gotten that many win shares goes on to have an All-Pro career. So, like, apparently Oladipo really has just flipped the script and made himself an incredible player. So yeah. And obviously, incredible player is better than Kyle Korver. He's a great 3-point shooter, but personally,
he doesn't add anything else.
Yeah, and like I would take Collison over Korver this season. I don't know how Collison's defense is, but I think that Korver's is worse.
I mean, Korver's old now. Like, it's not even.
Yeah. So that's shooting guard, and then in the most non-competitive matchup of the entire, the playoff podcast that we're doing, we have small forward LeBron James versus Bogdan Bogdanovic.
Bogdanovic is just.
Maybe Bojan actually. It's a J. I don't know.
No. Bohan.
Oh, Bohan.
No, Bohan. Bohan Bogdanovic is on the. You're right. Bohan Bogdanovic is on the Pacers. Bogdanovic is on the Kings.
Okay.
Thing. Or maybe I have that backwards. I don't know. Whatever. One of the Bogdanoviches. So, and then there's Marjanovic who's on the Pistons.
Yes.
Yeah. So, anyways, Bogdanovic. It's obviously LeBron. Bogdanovic can only shoot, not much else.
Yep. I mean, I don't think we need to say anymore. LeBron James, best player in the world, best player ever. Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have power forward. This one's pretty interesting, at least for me, because I'm a big Sabonis fan. We have Jeff Green versus Domantas Sabonis.
Well, Domas Sabonis he's had an amazingly impressive, like he's really improved this year.
Yeah.
He really showed that he can be like a pretty good player. Not as good as his dad, obviously, but he, strictly for defensive purposes, I'm going to have to go with Jeff Green because I've seen Jeff Green really be like LeBron's, I guess, go-to guy, like in terms of other than Kevin Love, because Kevin Love is kind of just for 3-point shots, but like in terms of like if LeBron just needs to not be holding the ball, like he just gives it to Jeff Green. So because Jeff Green is athletic, he can do something with it. He can get hot from three, and he's a really good defensive player, and he's really big actually. He's 6'9" with a really long wingspan. So I'm going to go with Jeff Green just for defensive purposes, and I think that his experience is pretty good too. He's been in a lot of battles with those Memphis teams. So.
Yeah, I would take Jeff Green in this one just because the Cavs need defense and Jeff Green is defense. I like Sabonis a lot, but I mean, he just is more of what the Pacers already have. So like, he's not really adding anything more aside from just more mid range, more good rebounding, more 3-point shooting, and like he
has been a good complementary piece to Oladipo this season. Though he has done a good job.
Yes, he has. And honestly, I know we were talking about the other most improved players of 2017, 2018, but I would give it to Sabonis if not for Oladipo this year, which really says a lot about the Pacers that they have two of the contenders for that.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, they've been one of the most improved teams. I think they finished as a 7 seed last year with Paul George, and now they're a 5 seed.
Yeah, it has been a really incredible year for the Pacers. Unfortunately, I think we both have them losing to the Cavs in the series, but we'll get to that later. So for the benches, we have for the Cavs Tristan Thompson, Larry Nance, Jose.
Oh, we didn't do center.
Oh, oops. We got. Oh, yeah. That one's actually really interesting too. Kevin Love versus Miles Turner.
Oh wow, I forgot about Miles Turner. He's a really good player too.
Yeah.
Wow. Miles Turner is a fantastic defender, but I don't think that he has expanded his range to the 3-point line yet. So it's kind of defense versus 3-point shooting plus rebounding. So just because Kevin Love has two stronger elements to his game, and because he complements LeBron James so well when he's a secondary option, I'm going to go with Kevin Love slightly.
Okay. Miles Turner is a good 3-point shooter, right?
Is he? I'm not entirely sure.
I'll look it up, but
maybe at a really low rate though. That might be what it is.
Yeah. If he is, I'm taking Miles Turner there. I think that he's a really good defender, and
he's a fantastic defender. I think he was really close to leading the league in blocks, I think, last year.
Yeah. And like he's a really good let me see, 3-point shooting, 3.57, so a little worse than Kevin Love actually. I'd say they're about the same in the paint, so I'm gonna switch that to Kevin Love just because of the 3-point shooting.
I just think Kevin Love works better with his team. I feel like Miles Turner was kind of the best player on this team, like last year, or not that. Well, Paul George after Paul George, of course, but he kind of stepped down now because Oladipo really kind of changed the way the whole team is. Like everything goes through him, and now Miles Turner's. I feel like his development has been a little bit stunted. Because I would love to see them play more of a 2-man game, Miles Turner and Victor Oladipo. I feel like they could be a deadly combination. I don't know why they don't do that more. Maybe Victor Oladipo plays a lot of isolation. I'm not really sure. But I like Miles Turner a lot. He was one of the steals of the 2015 draft. If not for Devin Booker, he would have been the steal of the draft. But I'll go Kevin Love. I think Kevin Love is he has become really underrated. Like when he's playing at his best with LeBron, and earlier this season he was close to shooting a 50-40-90 while giving you 20 points and 10 rebounds before Isaiah Thomas came back and ruined everything. So I'll go with Kevin Love.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to see how Miles Turner his next 2 years go, because those are going to be a make or break for his career. Either he's going to develop into an all-pro player, and it's going to be fantastic to watch alongside every other amazing center that's young right now in the league, or he's just going to be the guy that's left behind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he just needs to expand a little bit more. But
yeah, so far pretty good though. So for the bench, we have for the Cavs, Tristan Thompson, Larry Nance, Jose Calderon, and Jordan Clarkson. And then for the Pacers, I have Thaddeus Young, Corey Joseph, Lance Stevenson, and just because I'm not sure if he's actually having a good season or not, Al Jefferson.
I don't think Al Jefferson is doing much. I think it's clear as Cleveland's bench. They have weapons. Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance have great chemistry coming off the bench together. Larry Nance has great chemistry with LeBron. Jose Calderon has been probably the brightest spot of this season so far after LeBron James. They're 23-9 when Jose Calderon is in the starting lineup.
Wow.
He's been fantastic. He's been knocking down a lot of threes, and even though he's so old, he's caused problems defensively. Like, he really gets into the passing lanes, and he does his absolute best. He works his tail off on defense, even though he's old, which I really appreciate. And he's a knockdown 3-point shooter. I mean, he holds the record for the greatest free throw percentage in a season of all time. He's a really good shooter. He's been snubbed of some 50, 40, 90s by a couple of tenths of a point. There's Jose, there's Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance, and then Tristan Thompson. Obviously, we're not sure whether or not he'll really be that fantastic or whatever, if we'll come back to the Tristan of old. And then there's J.R. Smith as well, who can get hot whenever, 25 points in Game 5 of the NBA Finals.
Hit or miss.
Some key baskets a couple times. So, Cleveland's bench pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, that summarizes it pretty well. And, nobody's going to be raving about Lance Stevenson or anything. Hey, maybe he'll turn it on again. Maybe he'll blow in LeBron's ear again.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only way they'll beat him, if he blows so hard into LeBron's ear that LeBron gets, like, headaches.
Oh, you dislodged my eardrum. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, that'd be funny. But obviously not. But, poor Lance Stevenson. So for coaching, this one's actually kind of interesting because I know we're not a fan of Tyronn Lue outside of that 2016 finals. We have Tyronn Lue versus Nate McMillan.
I'll take Nate McMillan. I just think that he's done a fantastic job this year. He completely flipped over all the players he had. Paul George left, and he just I feel obviously to a degree every time that you have a good player who expands to something, it has something to do with coaching. So,
dang.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
It's like Nate McMillan has done a great job. Like, as I was saying, like, anytime that you have a star player who really develops kind of out of nowhere, you have to attribute some of it to the coaching and the schemes that came up as a result of that. Because they obviously attribute to that. So Nate McMillan, and plus, like, another weird thing about this Indiana team is they play, I think, at one of the slowest paces in the league, but they've still been so effective in doing that. And they're kind of like the old Grizzlies as well. I know I kind of use that a lot today, but they're like the old Grizzlies in the sense that they really don't shoot that many threes. They're not a 3-point shooting oriented team, even though they have good shooters. They don't rely on it heavily. They rely more on defense and scoring in half court, which is more of what the playoffs are about. So, I think that Nate McMillan will probably outcoach Tyronn Lue in the series, but I think all the players on the Cavs will outplay the Pacers in the series. Yeah,
more so than playing in the half court. Really, what the Pacers do, and this is fascinating. I don't know if you knew this, but if you just go by standard deviation, I bet you didn't think we were going to talk about that today. If you look at the Rockets, they are about I forget what it is, like 7 points per possession, not points per possession, like 3-pointers per 100 possessions or something, 7 above the league average. So, like, they're that far above. And then the Pacers are about 7 below. So, like, that's how few 3-point shots they're taking, and they're replacing it with mid-range shots, and apparently that's something that Nate McMillan had always preached in the college game, and he's brought it to the Pacers, and it seems like it's helped the Pacers out a ton. Like, the biggest thing is his philosophy is, if you have an open shot, take it. I don't care. He doesn't care if, like, you're one step within the 3-point line or you're right at the rim. He just wants you to take any open shot that you can possibly get and take it as early in the shot clock as you can take it. So, like, they're not necessarily playing fast, but, like, they're playing early in the shot clock. So, like, that's something that they're really doing a lot.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, so that's our pick for coach Nate McMillan over Tyronn Lue, because, he hasn't been this good this season, and who knows, maybe he'll go down with another injury. So after that, what the favorite needs to do to win, just flip the script. That's what the Cavs always need to do, and then for the Pacers, just cross your fingers that the Cavs don't flip the script. Yeah, so personally, I'm most excited to see LeBron in this series and, like, what the Pacers offense actually looks like. What are you most excited to see?
Sorry, Brian. Let me just take this call.
Yeah. Just let him know to. So why I'm excited to see LeBron. Do I really need to tell you guys? We've been talking about LeBron on, like, all of these podcasts, and he's such a fun player. Are you kidding me? And personally, just my pick. I think it's gonna be Cavs in 5. You would think I would say Cavs in 4, but I don't know if you guys remember this, but last year in the Cavs-Pacers series in the first round, there's a bit of a surprise that they played 2 years in a row. But in that sweep, the point differential over all of those games, you sum the point differential for each individual one, was actually 11 points. which is a very small amount when you consider that. Like what, like they had like two games where like it was like 3 points between them, and then like a 2 point and then a 3 point. Like that is a very close series. It broke the NBA record for a smallest point differential within a 4 game sweep. So that's ridiculous. So like the Pacers clearly know how to play LeBron close, and maybe that like comes out of their front office because like there's essentially no holdovers aside from the LeBron whisperer Lance Stevenson. But yeah, like if you remember in the 2012-2013 finals and Eastern Conference finals and the 2013-14 finals, you had the Pacers team led by Paul George, Lance Stevenson, and
Yeah,
Roy Hibbert, and like they played him incredibly close. Last year they played him incredibly close. So it seems like they have LeBron's number, and yeah,
I'm back, Ryan.
oh, okay, cool. So I'm just talking about my prediction of Cavs in five because of the minuscule point differential that happened last year, 11 points, which broke the NBA record for smallest point differential in a series sweep.
Yeah, I'm going to take Cavs in five as well. I just think LeBron is going to be too much. I mean, but I don't. He hasn't lost a first round game since 2012, but I think this will be the first time because I think there'll be at least one game where his teammates just completely flake on him as usual.
Yeah, and I'm very curious to see out of this series if the Cavs completely flip the script or not, because I think it's going to be a slow build up actually to
Yeah,
getting
because
what.
LeBron still needs to hold off a little bit because he's really going to need to become like the best defensive version of himself in the finals. He can't really do it that. He can't do it like super early or
Yeah, and especially not in this Eastern Conference playoffs.
because he played 82 games too. So you wouldn't want him to get burned out or anything before the finals.
Yep. Okay. So that's that series, and now we have what may be the most fun series aside from the Celtics Bucks. We have the Thunder Jazz. So this one's
Yeah,
fascinating. Okay.
this one I think will be a close series. Point guard matchup will be what Russell Westbrook and Ricky Rubio.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's much that needs to be said about it. I think we both like Ricky Rubio. We're fans of him, but he's still not liable offensively in terms of scoring at all. So Russell Westbrook, just because of his sheer athleticism, scoring, rebounding, assisting, even if he does steal some rebounds here or there, he's still a great player. So I'll go with Westbrook.
Yeah, I actually have Ricky Rubio as my X factor for this series. If Ricky Rubio has been it keeps playing to what he's been doing in like the past 10 games of the regular season, I think the Jazz have a good chance in this series. But if he doesn't, then they're going to struggle because I saw a stat recently where like if Ricky Rubio gets lower than 9 points in a game, like the Jazz have like some horrible winning percentage. But if he gets more than 9, they have like a really good one. So
Yeah,
they need production out of the point guard slot, but obviously he's not better than Russell Westbrook. Let's face it, Westbrook's in the top three for point guards in the league right now. He's been fantastic. I mean, there's really no way around that. He just finished averaging a triple double for the second season in a row. That's never been done. That's never being done again. He's incredible. Need I say more?
he's quite fantastic. So after what then shooting guard would be what then I guess
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell versus Raymond Felton.
Raymond Felton.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think they're actually starting Josh Westis. I'm sure he's
Ooh.
probably another Josh Hustis or something. But the
Oh.
reason they start him, I think, because they like to give Raymond Felton the second unit when Westbrook goes to the bench. But for what I'll just analyze it for both. If it's Raymond Felton versus Donovan, I think Donovan Mitchell wins both. I mean, he's been
Yeah.
fantastic as a rookie. He's the second rookie to lead his team, a playoff team in scoring. First rookie to do it since Carmelo Anthony. I mean, he's averaging 20.5 points per game, but I usually round up on his 0.5 for scoring because 21 points. So basically 21 points per game, and Donovan Mitchell's been fantastic this season. So I don't really think that there's a comparison to the shooting guard position.
Yeah, I agree. Donovan Mitchell, even though I don't think he's been rookie of the year, he has been very productive and like he's been one of the best rookies in the league. And Raymond Felton or Joe Westis, whoever that is, I didn't even have him on my bench listing for the Thunder. Apparently, he's some good player, but yeah, like it's Donovan Mitchell. He's great in isolation. He's great on 3 point shooting. He can lead an offense, not as a point guard obviously, but as a shooting guard in the same way Michael Jordan could. He's great on offense. He's not going to hurt you defensively, which is important because it's the Jazz. And yeah, that's shooting guard basically. So then we have a small forward, which we have Paul George versus the Ingler, old jingling Joe himself, Joe Ingles.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Paul George. I like Joe Ingles; he's a good player, but I mean, I'm definitely gonna have to go with not him.
Yeah, no kidding. And like I mean, it's not really much of a contest to be honest. Like Joe, he's awesome at 3-point shooting. That he's one of the best in the league, right next to Darren Collison,
Yeah,
and like basically the entire Rockets team. But there's not much to him aside from that. He's once again not going to hurt you defensively, but Paul George is obviously going to lift your entire team up defensively, so that's huge. And he's been great on offense this year. So yeah, okay.
yeah.
This next one's going to be pretty interesting. Actually, we have a power forward. You're going to be pissed about this, but I don't care. I have Jeremy Grant versus Derek Favors.
No Carmelo.
Nope, he's coming off
Well,
the bench.
that yeah, you're right. That honestly, I'm not going to argue with you. That would be the smarter decision. I just know that
Yeah,
Billy
no
Donovan
way.
doesn't have the guts to do it. So I'll go. I mean, if it's then, I'll go Derek Favors. I think he's had an underrated season. Jeremy Grant really doesn't give you much aside from athleticism and some good defense. He doesn't. I mean, and he's not even that great on defense. He's pretty good.
Yeah,
He's kind of more in there just to give you some power dunks and energy. So, but you're right. I do think he'd be more effective in the lineup than Carmelo Anthony because he slows down ball movement so much, and he'd be better as a bench scorer because he'd be able to legitimately be the best scorer off the bench, and so he wouldn't really have to share the ball as much, which he's not. He's not great at doing. So I'll go Derek Favors over Jeremy Grant
yeah,
or Carmelo Anthony for that matter.
yeah,
It really would matter.
I would as well. And like my biggest thing is just I think Carmelo Anthony has been terrible this season. To be honest, I think they completely wasted that trade away. That was horrible, and I'm frankly embarrassed that Daryl Morey was even thinking about signing Carmelo Anthony. That would have ruined the Rockets. It has basically ruined the Thunder this season, just because they've had to give Carmelo Anthony playing time. You can't take him out of the lineup because he's a superstar, but he just hasn't been good. He's been below average in a bunch of the advanced metrics for the league, which is not good, especially when you're making like 25 million a year and you have a no trade clause. So yeah, that's no good at all. And yeah, I mean Jeremy Grant isn't much better, unfortunately. So it's pretty clearly Derek Favors. Now center, I believe you know who I'm going to pick here, but I'll hear you out, I suppose. We have Steven Adams versus Rudy Gobert.
Oh wow. This is so hard for me because I love Steven Adams, but I'll have to go Rudy Gobert. He's Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And while Steven Adams is an amazing defender and amazing offensive rebounder, Rudy Gobert I think is just more skilled defensively. He can block more shots, and he gives you a little bit more, I believe, on offense just because he's a little bit better in the pick. He's not necessarily better in the pick and roll, but he's bigger, he's taller, so it's easier for him to kind of get some lobs, just put it in the basket. Whereas Steven Adams kind of has to work a little bit harder for it. He has to spend more time with the ball, whereas Rudy Gobert, you can just kind of give it to him and get an easy bucket right away. And between these two, it's more about their scrappiness and defense. And because Rudy Gobert is a better defender, I'll go with him. Because Rudy Gobert is an extremely underrated player. He should be an All NBA player, but he might not make it as a result of not having played enough games.
Yeah, which I would say would be a load of BS, just considering how many like he's played a ton of games. I believe 60 or 59 or something. So
I think it's 26, so whatever 82 minus 26.
Okay, so a bit lower, 66, but yeah, so I still think that's enough personally, but you can make a case against him. Obviously, it's not as compelling as the Embiid case for Rookie of the Year, but whatever. But yeah, I don't think there's much I need to say for this one. Rudy Gobert, best defensive player in the league. Personally, I think you can put him in the top 5 in the league overall this year. I think he has been that impactful for the Jazz. I think he's been.
I think Donovan Mitchell gets a little bit too much credit. Rudy Gobert is a huge part in them winning.
A little bit. Yeah, he gets 100 times too much credit. Donovan Mitchell he's good, but he is not Rookie of the Year caliber. He is certainly not the best player on the team. I mean, he's a good scorer. Don't get me wrong, but
he does nothing else. I mean, it's just scoring is so big in this league now that that's all anyone cares about. That he's legitimately going to get Rookie of the Year votes as a result of literally being able to do nothing effectively except score the ball.
Yeah, like Rudy Gobert is the best screener in the NBA. He's better than Al Horford, which is impressive. But yeah, best screener. He's the best pick and roll player. He's the best player at the rim. He's better than Clint Capella. It's close, but Capella also has the best two passers in the league. Like literally the two best in the league passing to him. I think they're better than Curry, but that's just me. And
point guards, because I would put LeBron up there as one of the best passers.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, yeah, two of the best free.
Two of the top 3.
Yeah, and yeah, just Gobert's amazing. I'm not that big of a Steven Adams fan, to be honest.
Really, I
I
like him a lot.
what?
I just said really, I like him a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah. I can tell. And like he had a good playoffs. I'll give him that. But like I just haven't seen much from the in the regular season. Ultimately, I just think of him as like a deferent person because he gives Russell Westbrook all of the defensive rebounds.
That is true.
And
He
yeah,
does.
like he doesn't seem like a crazy good protector. So
Yeah,
yeah.
he plays more team defense. He's more like a I'm not sure what a good comparison. Kind of like Clint Capella in a way, but yeah.
Okay, so that's the center position. Then we'll go to the bench. For the Thunder, I have Carmelo Anthony, Patrick Patterson, Alex Abrinas, and Corey Brewer. And then for the Jazz, I was actually surprised by how many players I like on this bench. Jonas Jerebko, I don't know what country he's from. This is a player we were talking about a couple podcasts ago. We didn't even know he was in the league still. Ekpe Udo.
Yeah.
He was famous for being a fantastic three-point shooter out of the center position. And we have Fabo Cephalosha, who's always underrated. Rodney Hood, Alec Burks, Jay Crowder from the Cavs, and then we have Raul Neto.
Yeah, I think you said Rodney Hood on accident. Rodney Hood is on the Cavs now.
Oh, oops,
Yeah,
my bad.
yeah. But I mean, yeah. Anyways, Jay Crowder has been much better in Utah than he was in Cleveland. But honestly, simply because I would give a slight edge to the Thunder because Corey Brewer has played phenomenally for the Thunder, and I just feel like Carmelo Anthony, now that it's playoff basketball, I feel like he will step up to a little bit of a better level, kind of maybe play more like he does in the Olympics or kind of like he used to in Denver when he was a sole option. And despite what people say about Carmelo Anthony, it's still a fact that he can still really heat up in like he scored like 15 points in a quarter, a couple games ago. And when he heats up, he can really be lethal. He's a natural scorer. He's a really gifted scorer, and he doesn't give you anything defensively. But just when you need a spark plug or you need some points off the bench, you can really put him down because he's deceptively strong. I mean, he's like 6'8" and he's pretty heavy too, so he can hit some. He can back you down in the post and get a nice little turnaround jump shot. He can isolate, and he gets off a lot of good mid-range jump shots. And he can hit that three when he's on. So Carmelo Anthony and Corey Brewer would be the two main pieces that would make me lean towards the Thunder bench, simply because I don't see anyone on the Utah bench that can really come in and give you any sort of scoring lift. You get a lot of well-rounded players, defensive players and stuff like that, but you don't really have that one guy up. Like Utah doesn't really have a definitive sixth man, if you know what I'm saying. Like they don't really have someone like a Jordan Clarkson or a Carmelo Anthony
Or Joe Johnson.
Joe Johnson is on the Rockets.
No, I know. I was saying like they used to have him.
They used to, yeah, you're right. He used to be that guy. He won them a playoff game for God's sake. But last season against the Clippers when he hit that game winner in game one against the Clippers. But yeah, I'll go with the Thunder bench simply, for star power, and just Corey Brewer has been playing phenomenally for them since he's gotten there, and he's 6'9", long wingspan, great defense, and great 3-point shooter. So I'll take the Thunder bench, but slightly though, because the Utah's bench is definitely better defensively.
Yeah, and like I think it comes down to if Carmelo Anthony lives up to his playoff performances. Personally, I think he actually will, despite the fact that I've been down on him. But I just say based on his regular season performance, he doesn't deserve that benefit of the doubt, so that's why he's starting off the bench. For me, Corey Brewer, I think he's about tied with Fabo Cephalosha, just because I think Cephalosha is so underrated in how much he brings to every team he's been on.
Yeah, he's a good playmaker and a good defender.
Yeah, like he's just an awesome. He's the kind of role player that any coach wants to just plug into their lineup.
It's like he used to play on the Thunder. It's funny.
Oh yeah, I was mostly thinking of him on the Hawks.
He was the starting shooting guard on the 2012 Finals team. He started ahead of James Harden.
Okay. I actually didn't know that. I mostly just think of him on the Hawks.
Oh, yeah, he did spend a lot of time there.
Yeah, so I think they offset each other. I think Patrick Patterson is offset by Jay Crowder when he's on, but I don't really trust that he's on right now. And then I think Alex Abrinas is the big X factor there, along with Carmelo Anthony. If Alex Abrinas stays healthy, because I know he had that concussion, then he's going to be really good offensively. He's a great driver. He's a great three-point shooter. He's something that the Thunder need, and he gives the bench the edge along with Carmelo Anthony if he plays to his playoff projections and like his playoff history. So yeah, that's the bench with the Thunder Jazz matchup, and then we have Coach Billy Donovan versus Quinn Snyder. This one's not really close.
Quinn Snyder by far better defensive coach, better schemes, better plugging his players into good situations, far and away. Quinn Snyder. I don't even think we need to talk about that.
Yeah, no. Like, I mean, Billy Donovan, I don't even know why he got brought in, to be honest. He doesn't even seem like he's that good.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what I think the favorite needs to do to win. So, for the Thunder, I think you have to get production from Carmelo Anthony off the bench. Like, that's been a problem all year that, like, Carmelo Anthony has not been doing enough out of the starting lineup. He's on the bench for me now, so, like, he's got to do something. And you got to find a way to score at the rim despite Rudy Gobert being there. Because it's something I mentioned during one of the breaks was Russell Westbrook, whenever he's facing Rudy Gobert, his drive percentage goes down from 35% on the season to 15%. And
That's absurd.
yeah, and like points in the paint for him is massive to his game. So like if you can't find a way to score in the paint against Gobert, you're not winning this series.
And I'll give you a stat in just a second that'll help that a lot.
Yeah, so like that's my thing. And then for what the Jazz have to do to win, make sure Jalen Joe gets the freeze. Make sure Rubio keeps up the great offense because of that stat I mentioned. And yeah, hopefully Gobert doesn't get injured because that would suck.
Well, for me, it's so the Thunder. In order for the Thunder to win, this is very interesting. I was going to say prior to you telling me that stat about the 35 to 19% or 35 to 15. Sorry, Russell Westbrook. The team's record they play, I think, in like a 58-win, 57-win pace when Russell Westbrook shoots 4 or less threes. But obviously, now that he can't drive nearly as much because of Rudy Gobert, he's probably going to have to shoot more threes, which will probably result in them losing more games. So that was what I would say was that Russell Westbrook need to shoot more threes and be more consolidated in the paint. So I guess now he's probably going to be relegated to pull up mid-range jump shots because he's not going to be able to get to the rim nearly as easily as he would against other teams.
Yeah, and obviously his 3-point percentage isn't as good as it was last year, so that's going to be an even bigger factor.
Oh yeah, it dropped like 5%. That is true. And then but other Carmelo Anthony, he's a big X factor, and I think Paul George really needs to get out of the shooting slump. He needs to probably average a consistent maybe 25 points per game in this series, honestly, because I'm sure Westbrook will probably average something crazy, like 32, 33 something, just because he's Westbrook.
Yeah.
And then, Melo will probably need to pour in, close to 20, maybe somewhere between 15 and 20, something like that. Hopefully like 16, 17. His average, but in a more efficient manner.
Yeah.
Steven Adams is going to need to really have to fight Rudy on the glass. He's going to have to get those offensive rebounds. And then for the Jazz to win, Donovan Mitchell is going to need to have an excellent series, in my opinion. Ricky Rubio is going to have to give you something in terms of his scoring ability. He's going to have to knock down, maybe a couple, some threes. This might surprise you, but I've actually seen Ricky Rubio hit a game-winning 3 at the buzzer. Not for the Jazz, but for the Timberwolves when he was on the T-Wolves. But Rubio's going to have to give you something. You're basically, for Utah and Joe Ingles, like you mentioned, is going to have to cook it up with his left hand like he does. So then you're going to, and Quinn Snyder, I think, will outcoach Billy Donovan, but he's, that's a given that he will do that, I feel like. But, that's just something that he might want to stay on his toes because, you never want to get outcoached by a bad coach like, Steve Kerr did in the 2016 finals.
Yeah, that's never a good thing. And the big thing that Billy Donovan tried to do in those games against Rudy Gobert to try and fix the problem was have Rudy Gobert constantly having to switch onto players on the perimeter just, by doing the old pick and roll thing.
Yeah,
not really pick and roll, but
switch them on to Paul George or someone like that. That could be an issue for.
But like the thing is, you can't do that every time. It's only going to work so many times. And like if Quinn Snyder's a good enough coach that he will adjust to that, and I don't know, he'll do something that'll stop you from doing that every single play. So like there's going to be some drop off in the amount of in the drive percentage of Russell Westbrook, and that's really going to affect his game, as you said. But what I'm most excited to see, Gobert, obviously. But really, I'm excited to see the entire Jazz offensive structure and just how they play defense. So I think that's going to be super interesting to see. I want the Jazz to win, and I'm predicting that they do win in 7 because I think that the biggest thing that's going to happen, I think that Russell Westbrook is going to struggle a lot in this series. I think that he's either going to go cold from the perimeter or somebody's going to stay cold from the perimeter, and that's going to be a big deal because like they're not going to be able to get to the rim at all. Maybe Gobert has a bad series, but I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't think Steven Adams is going to live up to his past performances. I just think that the Jazz are going to eke this one out because it's still tough. The Thunder have a ton of talent, but I don't think it'll be enough.
See, the thing with me is I think that one reason that Pat Riley once said no rebounds, no rings, and the Thunder, they're second in the league in rebounding to the 76ers this year, and usually they're first. They were first last year. They were first the year they had Durant as well. The last year they had Durant as well. But the reason that they are like that is because Westbrook averages 10, and then Adams averages 9, and
Yeah.
the reason for that is because Adams boxes out the bigger players so that Westbrook can go and get the rebound, but it's not going to be nearly as easy for Adams to box out Rudy Gobert over a 7-game series as it is for him to box out like these smaller players that he usually boxes out. So I think as a result of that, the Thunder's rebounding percentage is going to dip because you've got Derek Favors, who's a good rebounder. You got Ricky Rubio, who's a good rebounder for a point guard. You've got Rudy Gobert, obviously, who can rebound. You've got Donovan Mitchell, who gives you about 4 a game for a rookie, which is pretty good. And then you've got Jake Crowder, who can get you some rebounds. Like, I think overall, it's just the OKC is going to have Utah is like probably the worst matchup that they could have gotten in the first round because they have counters to all of them. But despite that, I just think that at some point, I think Quinn Snyder, I don't think that he has enough perimeter defenders to, I guess, have to, worry about Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Carmelo Anthony, Corey Brewer all at the same time. I think that they're going to make it a perimeter-oriented series, and I think Paul George is really going to have to shoot the lights out. But I think that he's capable of it because the last 5 games of the season, he was averaging 28 points per game, and he was really shooting it well. So I assume he'll carry that over into the playoffs, and I'll take the OKC Thunder in a really, really gritty 6 or 7 games.
Yeah, it's just going to be a really fun series for me and for you.
It's going to be grinding it out for sure.
Yeah, which is something we want to see so badly in this regular season that's been dominated by spacing and just a ton of free-point shooting.
Yeah.
Speaking of spacing and a ton of free-point shooting, we have our last matchup for the NBA playoffs, the Rockets versus the Timberwolves. Hopefully we have a lot of insight on this one, at least in terms of the Timberwolves, but I think I know a lot about the Rockets as well.
Yeah, point guard, I guess, would be Jeff Teague and Chris Paul.
Yeah.
So I got Chris Paul. I mean, I love Chris Paul. I think he's one of the most brilliant players. I think he's one of the most underrated players of this generation. He's just unfortunate that he hasn't played on better teams or with more talent. He's so gifted. He's such a good defender, such a good passer, such a good shooter. He's just phenomenal. He's brilliant. And I don't think I've ever once seen Chris Paul get thoroughly outplayed by anybody. I feel like it's always just been Chris Paul's teammates get outplayed and then he ends up suffering all the blame. And, he gets all the blunt of the blame and all that, which is kind of stupid. But, Chris Paul's never really choked despite what all the narratives say. He's had 1 game where he came up small, but he literally was carrying his team on an injury. He's clutch. He hit a bank shot with a pulled hamstring and against the Spurs in Game 7 when they were the defending champions. He's just been hammered with injuries, but I've got Chris Paul pretty easily over Jeff Teague. I like Jeff Teague, but he's more of a score-first point guard that's trying to transition into being a pass-first point guard because he's playing with so many good scorers, but he's still not that great of a three-point shooter or anything like that. So I think it's fairly easily it's Chris Paul. He's literally better at everything: scoring, rebounding, passing, stealing, defending, three-point shooting, mid-range shooting, handling the ball, turnover, assist-to-turnover ratio, like we mentioned the other day. Chris Paul by far, I would say.
Yeah, and we've talked about how at least by win shares per 48 minutes or 36 minutes, Chris Paul is literally the best player ever. And that's something you obviously can't compete with if you're Jeff Teague. But yeah, Chris Paul is probably the best point guard of our generation. If you want to go back before Stephen Curry, obviously he's taken over now. But yeah, it's an incredible thing that he's done. He's the best passer that's been in the league. I would take him over LeBron James. I know that's controversial in terms of passing, of course. If you got it,
I don't think that's that controversial. I think LeBron James is more gifted at making certain passes, but I don't think that he's a better passer than Chris Paul because while LeBron James is able to make some fantastic passes, he is kind of high turnover when he passes the ball a lot.
Okay.
Obviously it's more difficult for him because he's 6'8" and he's got less room to he's got more room. I mean, he's got more room to make mistakes like when the ball is coming up and down. Whereas Chris Paul is really low to the ground, which is a factor, even though some people might not think that it's that big a deal. And LeBron James just throws riskier passes most of the time. He does more experimenting. So, yeah, I would agree with that. Chris Paul is probably the best passer in basketball. He has been for an extremely long time. And I really, really want him to have a high assist season next season because his career average is 9.9. And I really want it to be 10.
That'd be really cool. But doesn't Stockton have a 12 or an 11 or something?
I think Stockton is 11. The highest ever is Magic Johnson, 11.2.
Okay.
Steve Nash is 8.5, and then John Stockton is 10.5, I believe.
Okay, gotcha. And yeah, Chris Paul, amazing defender as well. There's almost an endless amount of things that you can say about him. He's a fantastic teammate. He's just a standout guy, and yeah.
Yeah, he's the Nobody has led the league in steals more times than Chris Paul, and I think he's like he's an 8-time All Defensive Team selection.
Yep, leader of the NBA Players Association. He's just awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Chris Paul, what a guy. Honestly, him and LeBron playing together would have been my greatest dream, but I just hope Chris Paul doesn't deteriorate too much with age. I hope he's able to have a long career.
Yeah, him and LeBron James.
Yeah. And then shooting guard would be what? Would that be Jimmy Butler and James Harden?
I actually gave it to Andrew Wiggins because I think he's smaller in reach.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So you put Andrew Wiggins and James Harden. In that case, yeah, I did. If regardless of if it was Jimmy Butler or Andrew Wiggins, I would give it to James Harden just because of the season that he's having. But since it's Andrew Wiggins, I think it's definitely James Harden. I mean, he's literally just the MVP this year at 30 points, 9 assists, 5 rebounds, great shooter, amazing in isolation. Andrew Wiggins has been kind of a disappointment ever since he came into the league in terms of he's a good scorer, but he really doesn't do anything else. He's kind of like Donovan Mitchell in a way. He's just a good scorer, not really that efficient of a scorer. He doesn't really give you anything on defensively, even though he's 6'8" and long. He's not a good rebounder, not a good playmaker, not a fantastic three-point shooter. He's just a good scorer.
Yeah, and an atrocious defender.
He's he's one of the worst defenders in the league. He might have been. I think he's been the worst defender in the league like twice.
Yeah. So yeah, this is easy. You literally have the MVP candidate versus the player who should get off this team. He sucks. I mean, you can put him on the bench if you want, but he's not going to be happy being on the bench, so you kind of have to trade him.
Yeah, they should. I think they should flip Andrew Wiggins and some draft picks for some good bench players, because I feel like you can have Jimmy Butler and Karl Anthony Towns carry you, and then just have Jeff Teague and Jeff Teague kind of be your third option because he's still a viable scorer. He can be around 17 points per game at his best. So as a third option, he could probably give you 14, which is about all you really need.
Yeah, I'd love to see the bench get even better. It's already pretty good, but if you look at it, there's not that many players that are that good on it. But yeah, if you can make it even better, that'd be cool. But after that, we have small forward, which is Trevor Ariza versus Jimmy Butler. I mean, clearly it's Jimmy Butler, but would you take Trevor Ariza over Andrew Wiggins?
Honestly, I would, because he's just better for his team. He's a great defender and he's a great three-point shooter, whereas Andrew Wiggins kind of gives the team unnecessary worry as to whether or not he's going to take good shots or bad shots, because he can be inconsistent. So if Andrew Wiggins takes a lot of if Andrew Wiggins takes a lot of shots in general and he makes all of them, then it's a good thing that he's there. But if he takes a lot of shots and he misses all of them, it's a horrible thing, because he was taking shots away from Jimmy Butler and Karl Anthony Towns, who were both more likely to have made all of those shots. So in the series, I would give it to Trevor Ariza. As an overall player, I guess you debated Ariza's more well-rounded, and he probably doesn't have that much skill offensively individually. But for the series, I would put Ariza over Wiggins, but I would definitely put Butler over Ariza, because Butler's having a fantastic season. If he hadn't gotten hurt, this team would probably be the 4th or 5th seed. They were on pace to win, I think, 53, 54 games before the Butler injury, and then they had a horrible stretch without him. So Jimmy Butler's having a fantastic season. I think he should be on an all-defensive team. He's done a great job, both ends. He literally willed them to, aside from Taj Gibson's amazing defense, he literally willed them into the playoffs in his 3rd game back from a meniscus injury. He played 41 minutes.
Yeah, 42 actually.
Yeah, as Tibbs loves to do that. So
yeah,
I'll take Butler over.
Yeah, and secretly, Trevor Ariza has been the best free and D player in the past 5 years. I loved him on the Wizards. I love him on the Rockets now. He's awesome.
He's experienced too. He has a championship.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I can't believe it, but yeah, he did get one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Trevor Ariza for you, and yeah, Jimmy Butler is one of my favorite players to watch. He's one of the most clutch players in the NBA. Once again, you never talk about the players that are actually clutch. We only talk about the ones that just look clutch. But yeah, Jimmy Butler, whenever the game, whenever the game's at its conclusion, you see him with the ball, and most of the time he's making the shot, and it's incredible.
Yeah, he's very skilled too. I think it's he's kind of a grittier looking guy, So you don't really expect all this skill from him, but he can hit step back jumpers. He can handle the ball. He's really agile. He's athletic. He's a great player. I really like Jimmy Butler. He's one of my favorite players in the league.
Me too. Okay, now we have power forward, where we have Ryan Anderson versus Taj Gibson.
Yeah, I think Ryan Anderson might be injured, so I think they start PJ Tucker.
Oops.
But that's neither here nor there. I think either way is Taj Gibson. And I'm just saying that because from a defensive standpoint, there's just nothing that like
Well,
he's
PJ
just
Tucker, but yeah.
he's phenomenal. PJ Tucker's a great defender, but I like Taj Gibson just because he's so tenacious, like with rebounding and his defense, and he can give you about 10 points a game because he's skilled when he's close to the basket. So I'll give it to Taj Gibson, but it's depending if it's Ryan Anderson, I'll definitely take Taj Gibson. But if it's PJ Tucker, then it's probably about even. I'd give maybe the slight edge to PJ Tucker just because he can shoot threes and play defense. But um, against Ryan Anderson, it's Taj Gibson. Against PJ Tucker, it's PJ Tucker.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I love Taj Gibson on defense. We've talked about so many times how he's the perfect example of a center that has amazing reach. Like he stands like 6'10" or something, but his reach is like 8 inches longer than his height, so he can play center. And he's awesome at it. I put him at power forward here just because I didn't know where else to put Karl Anthony Towns. But yeah,
Yep.
the only thing Ryan Anderson can do is shoot freeze. He's not good on defense. It's completely overshadowed by the fact that he plays on an amazing defensive team, so they don't have to worry about it. And yeah, like that's all he does. He just shoots freeze. I mean, be it as it may, he does it in a very impressive fashion. Is like I'm surprised like he actually isn't better than LeBron James at shooting those frees from way behind the arc. Because like
Yeah.
every time you watch a Rockets game, he's shooting like one from like 30 feet out.
Yeah, honestly, he really does shoot from deep.
Yeah, it's
It's a
absolutely
strange
ridiculous.
form, but regardless.
Yeah. So getting into center, I don't think this one is as much of a competition as people are expecting. We have Clint Capella versus Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, I mean, I think Clint Capella is a great defender. He's had an underrated season. He's a great rebounder. The Rockets are, I think, their record is like 41-3 when Clint Capella, Chris Paul, and James Harden, all three of them play. He's been an underrated part of the quote unquote big three, but Karl Anthony Towns, I think, is a top three center in this league. He's phenomenal. He's made a stride defensively. He's not phenomenal defensively, but he's in the right spots. He doesn't block a lot of shots or anything, but he plays good team defense. He's in the right spots at the right times, and he's offensively. He's just like I don't think people understand how much of a step back he took because Jimmy Butler came. Like last season, he averaged 25 points and 12 rebounds in his second year in the NBA, and he shot like close to 40. I think he shot like 38% from three and 54% from the field. And this season, he's become more efficient. He's shooting, I think, 55% from the field and 44% from three, or 43, or something like that. And like we mentioned earlier when we were talking about him and Jokic, he came close to being a 50-40-90 guy if he had went on a hot streak of free throws. So I think it's Karl Anthony Towns. I think I'd say that pretty comfortably because even though Clint Capella is a great defender, it's not like he defends top caliber centers every night because the center position is so weak around the league. So him having to do that for an entire series, I think is going to weigh on them. And I think that's the one matchup that they can go to pretty frequently because the Rockets are not a big team. Clint Capella is really their biggest player, and he's I think 6'10". So Karl Anthony Towns, I think, is going to be he's going to be a big factor in this series, whether or not the Wolves can get some games.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. I think Clint Capella is the perfect example of why a lot of statisticians say don't just look at the advanced metrics because if you're on a fantastic team, your metrics will be boosted. If you
Exactly.
Sorry?
I said exactly.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, he's leading the all centers in win shares, but that's entirely just because he's getting passes from two of the three best passers in the NBA. Like, what do you expect? You're getting awesome outlet passes whenever, not even outlet, just, I guess, inset passes whenever you're in the paint. You can always count on him to give you a good lob, and he just throws it down every time. He's good at defense, but, like, he's not otherworldly or anything. Obviously, Karl Anthony Towns is not, but, Karl Anthony Towns. If you switch them, I think the Rockets would be way better, honestly, which is
Yeah.
unbelievable. But yeah, like just because Karl Anthony Towns can score his own basket, if you give the ball to Clint Capella out on like the perimeter, what's he going to do if he's going to pass it to somebody else? He's not shooting. He's not shooting from there. He's not driving in. Like the only thing that Clint Capella can do is just back somebody down and score. And be it as it may, he's the best player in the NBA at doing that. But that's all he can do.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because like he's obviously leading the league in field goal percentage, but yeah, like it's not too hard to do that when you're only taking shots within like 5 feet of the rim. So yeah, that's the center position, and then we'll go through bench. So obviously we got an incredible bench for the Rockets. You have Eric Gordon, the Sixth Man of the Year award winner last year. You have PJ Tucker, who apparently is starting. He's an awesome 3-and-D player. He's very good. You got Luke Mbamote, the Nigerian Prince, whatever. He's a very good player. I believe he's actually the former Clippers player. I think I screwed that up earlier. And then you
Yeah.
have Nene, who apparently changed his name back to Nene Hilario. Don't ask me why he did that. I don't know.
Yeah.
And like alongside Zaza and Kelly Olynyk, he's like one of those guys that just injures people because he's kind of a jerk like that. And then we have Gerald Green. And then on the Timberwolves, I picked out Tyus Jones, Gorgie Dang, Nemanja Bjelica, Jamal Crawford, and Derrick Rose, question mark, exclamation point, question mark.
I hate to do this to you, but Luke Richard and Bob Mute will be out for the first round.
Dang it!
Yeah, but yeah, I hated that to say that because you seem really, really fond of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I got the Rockets bench because Gerald Green is so athletic. He can shoot a three. He made a game-winning jump shot for them. I mean, Eric Gordon is his reigning sixth man of the year. They've got so many weapons off the bench. They can all shoot threes. I mean, it's crazy. Like their depth. Like I feel like this year, prior to this year, like even just looking at the names that were coming off their bench, like it's like wow, like they have a bench that can like it's like on paper they could really outshoot Golden State, which is something that I didn't think I would ever say. Given how they've been performing, how the Warriors have been performing the last two seasons. So, yeah, I've got the Rockets bench because I feel like while the Timberwolves bench does have good players, like, Derrick Rose, he's not necessarily good anymore, but he can still create some things with the paint. And he's actually surprised. I mean, this is a surprising thing to say because people would never expect this from Derrick Rose, but he's played some really, really good defense since he's been on the Timberwolves. He's kind of dedicated all of his athleticism more towards playing defense rather than trying to do all these crazy layups and dunks now because obviously he's not a number one option offensively or even a number two or number three or number four. So I watched their game against the Rockets a couple weeks ago, and he was playing some really, really good defense on Chris Paul.
Yeah, we actually watched that one together. Yeah.
Yeah, he played really good defense in that game.
Yeah, I was sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, and but the problem with the Timberwolves bench, I think, is that they just don't have enough guys who can shoot threes and play defense, which is kind of what you're going to need to do if you're going to play the Rockets. Because I feel like the only way you can beat the Rockets is if you either have more talent in them, more talent than they do, or if you can outshoot them and outdefend them. Which there's literally only one team that could do that in the league, and that's Golden State. Or you'd need a transcendental player to have, or a transcendent player, excuse me, to have the greatest stretch of games of all time, which would be the Cavs' only chance of beating them, I think, in the finals.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Jamal Crawford doesn't shoot threes or play defense. Derrick Rose doesn't shoot threes or play defense. And Nemanja Bjelica shoots threes. I don't think he plays that much defense. Tyus Jones, he can play defense. I don't really know if he can shoot threes that well. So, strictly because of like the Rockets' bench ability, like they just have so many guys that can play defense and shoot threes. They've got Gerald Green, like I said, Luke Mute, like I said, Eric Gordon, like I said. So I've got the Rockets bench fairly easily.
Yeah, me too. I'm a fan of Gorgie Dang and Nemanja Bjelica, but I mean that's really all they have. Jamal Crawford, a lot of people are just remembering how he's been a couple years ago. He's not having that great of a season, honestly. He's kind of finally hit the aging curve. And Derrick Rose, yeah, like I've been super happy with how he's been on defense because I was expecting him to be a terrible pickup by the Timberwolves. I think I mentioned that like 5 times before we watched that game, but no, he was incredible in that, and like he almost single-handedly got the Timberwolves back in that game because they were down by like 40, and then I think the final score was like within 8, which was incredible.
Yeah, he has done a pretty good job. I mean, I like Derrick Rose. I just feel so bad for the guy that I can't help but root for him. So.
Yep. Okay, so I mean, we don't really even need to talk about what the favorite needs to do to win and what the underdog does. Obviously, it's going to come down to injuries. I think even if Harden and Chris Paul underperform in the game, I think the Rockets still win just because they have so much talent.
Yeah, I'll take the Rockets in 5.
Yeah.
No, we can talk about coaching, but I think.
Oh yeah, we forgot to talk about coaching. My bad. So we can rant. I guess we can rant against Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, I mean, I like Tom Tibbs, but I mean, he plays his starters too many minutes. He doesn't really understand bench management or player management or anything like that. D'Antoni does. D'Antoni is a historically good offensive coach, and this year he's really made strides defensively. Maybe he just surrounded himself with good assistants, but I'll take the coaching with the Rockets because, I mean, he coached a 65-win team. Like, you can't argue with that. So I'll take D'Antoni over Tibbs in this case.
Yeah, I will as well. I mean, at some point, Tom Thibodeau, someone's gonna have like a heart attack on the court. It's ridiculous, and I honestly, I wonder if how many more minutes are the starters gonna play in the playoffs? Is it like Karl Anthony Towns gonna play like 46 minutes a game? Like it's ridiculous how many minutes he's playing. He played in the regular season along with Jimmy Butler, along with Andrew Wiggins. Just everybody's playing way too many minutes, and yeah, he's not gonna learn. But yeah,
Yeah,
I have Rockets in four as well, and yeah, that's all of the playoff matchups actually. So just to do a recap for everybody, can you give me your ranking of like which series you're most excited to watch, starting from the worst?
yeah. Starting from worst. All right, let me pull all of them up. I don't want to mix any up real quick.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Let's see. Let's see. So, okay. So Spurs Warriors. I've got. Okay, that's probably the one I'm least excited to see. After that, I'm least excited to see the Raptors Wizards. After that, I'm least excited to see Timberwolves Rockets. After that, I'm least excited to see Pacers Cavaliers. After that, I'm pretty excited to see Heat 76ers. I'm more excited to see Pelicans Trailblazers. I'm more excited to see Bucks Celtics. And then I'm most excited to see Jazz Thunder.
I think that might be exactly the same as mine actually.
Yeah, I kind of want to I just want to watch grinded out series. I don't really want to watch blowouts and stuff. So
Yeah, and they're gonna make us wait for it. That being the seventh game, seventh series that they're actually starting. But yeah, so okay, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to that little playoff preview we gave. We're probably gonna check back in after either. Yeah, we'll probably do like the yeah, okay. So I think we'll do a recording next Saturday because that's when the NBA is going to be weird and like have some game threes going on at the same time as game fours. So yeah,
yeah,
that seems like a perfect time to do an intermission, recap what's gone on so far in the playoff series, talk about how much we were wrong, talk about how I was wrong with the Bucks, talk about how well, LeBron James really didn't turn it on, or oh, the Raptors look horrible against the Wizards, and just
yeah,
a hundred different ways that we could have been wrong in this whole predictions thing. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed listening to 3.5 hours of us talking about the playoffs, good God, whew, I am really feeling it after this. I can't wait to stand up. Then hey, give us a review on iTunes. It was a lot of fun for us, and I hope you guys had a lot of fun too. Give us a 5-star review if you guys think so. And hey, do it on other podcasting platforms too, because I use iTunes, but I get it. Some people use Overcast, some people use a bunch of other ones that I don't know about because I use the iPhone, and yeah, so that's an option. You can also go to our YouTube page, Topical Rationalizing the Monkey Brain. That's always a good option. You can give us a subscribe on there, hit the bell, because I don't see a reason why people don't ever hit the bell on subscribes. Like, you're subscribing, you want to know when it happens, right? Just get an email, put it in a separate email, whatever. And give us a comment. Say, hey, I'm here from the podcast. Welcome to the uncut land. That could be always interesting. And you know what? We're going to see you next time after game 7.